Hello, welcome to Reels and Heels Live. I'm Brian Wenslow, and today we have two very awesome guests. We have John Crowther, who is a comic book writer, wrestling historian, I guess you would call him. I mean, he writes really good comic book wrestling biographies of like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Killer Bees.
Okay, why are you doing that?
Come on, you got to be for dramatic. We have, and then Rob, let's see if I can pronounce his last name, DiLauro. 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 Sorry, I butcher last names.
You screwed it up.
I screwed it
I
up.
sort of did it right.
Anyways, we have him down there. He's a horror journalist for the last 10 years. So he's going to have a lot of great stories to tell. But let's go ahead and bring John on. Hold on, let's see here. Oh, there's John.
I got a countdown. That was nice.
Yeah. So how you doing today?
Good. I'm enjoying some outdoor weather, and I live like 2 blocks from what sounds like a live soccer match. So I'm hearing a soccer game as we talk.
Oh yeah, girls soccer, right?
Yeah, look, Stetson ladies soccer. I've heard them say Hatter's goal twice, so I think we're up 2-0.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for our viewers out there,
Can people see us? Or just the half of my face?
oh, let me fix the screen there. All right. For our listeners and viewers, go ahead and introduce yourself. Me and you have known each other for a few years now.
Right. Okay, so my name is John Crowther. I am a freelance comic book writer. I write for several publishers, most notably for people who are comic book fans. You probably recognize Heavy Metal, Antarctic Press. I've done a few series with Antarctic, and I've got a publishing company that I co-created with a friend, Kevin Laporte, and Amanda Rachel's, called Squared Circle Comics. So I write a lot of authorized biographical wrestling titles as well.
Oh, nice. Yes, I did read the Jim Duggan one, and I thought that was a really good one.
Okay, yeah, and the second one, we just wrapped up the Kickstarter actually on the second one last week, so we're continuing that series too.
Nice. So, what got you into comic book writing and the love of wrestling?
Well, that's two different questions, really, kind of a twofold thing. But ever since I was a kid, I was a fan of both. So I remember probably around 6th or 7th grade, I used to get dropped off by a school bus. And this is kind of how I got into comics. And on the walk home or walk to my dad's office where he worked, I always passed two things: a Rexall drugstore and a veggie stand. So I would always, that's when they had those old spinner racks. So I would always duck in that Rexall. I'd pick up a couple comics and hit the veggie stand for, a lot of people probably wouldn't be into this, but a nice fresh tomato. So I'd eat a tomato and I'd read my comics. And that's where I started loving comics, was way back then. Wrestling, around the same age too. I remember I would go over and visit my great-grandparents over in Edgewater, Florida, in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. And my great-grandfather was a huge fan of championship wrestling from Florida, one of the old NWA territories. And that's where I kind of got that love for wrestling, was watching it, and he was really into it. Of course, when you're a kid, you see all that physicality, the jumping, the fighting, and all that. It draws you in. So big fan of like Wahoo McDaniel, Dusty Rhodes, Blackjack Mulligan, all those old guys from back in the old days here in championship wrestling from Florida. And then I've been lucky enough to tie the two in together as I got older, because I was always a fan of writing, but I just never, put myself out there. I think that's one of the, if there's any drawbacks that humans have, is there's these things you love to do, but you're afraid to actually take that step and do them. And that's kind of how I was for 40 plus years, and until I finally said, what the hell, let's go with it. So I wrote my first comic, which was called Rochelle the Teen Cockroach. And that's how kind of we met, I think, with Rochelle. Yeah. And I did that because I had a daughter at the time who was a young teenager. She's now 20 and an artist in her own right. But I didn't feel that there were enough strong lead female characters out there in comics that weren't, in my opinion, over-sexualized. Just a strong lead female character that didn't have to have body parts falling out and skimpy outfits. She could just be a tough character, and it could be based on her personality and her ability to fight crime and do all these great things. So I came up with Rochelle and actually based her on my daughter physically without telling her, which was kind of a neat thing. And it got picked up by a small publisher here in Florida called AC Comics and ran as a flip book on the back of issue, I think, 170 of FemForce. And it's kind of just taken off from there, hooked up with the guys over at Antarctic Press and ran Rochelle for a couple of years, a couple series there, and we may bring her back again. And it just kind of segued into the wrestling stuff and into new titles. I write horror comics, co-write horror comics for Antarctic Press. I'm a writer on their Exciting Comics series. I did a Turnbuckle Titans Nikolai Volkov series with Antarctic, which Nikolai was also, and we can talk about that, was also my first actually wrestling title, and we carried it over to Antarctic and ran it there as a 3-issue biographical series too. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what is the process to do these wrestling comics? Like, I'm sure you have to reach out to the family if the wrestler has passed, or
Yeah, well, generally what we've done is we've focused. I mean, I reach out to the wrestlers on my own, and we've generally focused on wrestlers who are still living. So I haven't been really chasing down wrestlers who've already passed away. Sadly enough, I've lost 3 of the wrestlers who've turned into good friends. But since we did the series, which is kind of one of the reasons we were doing it, because I know these guys are getting older and these gals are getting older, and it's a nice way of kind of locking in their legacy in a comic book form, because not everybody wants to read the novels and not everybody just wants to pick up an 8x10. It kind of gives you their life story. I stay kayfabe on the matches. So it started originally, Nikolai, believe it or not, was a fan of my Rochelle series, and we had a mutual friend who put me in contact with Nikolai, and I've got a fly that keeps landing on me if you see me swatting. But so I remember the first time I made a phone call to Nikolai, because his voice, and a lot of these wrestlers, their voices, they really, because of all the promos and stuff they've done over the years, it's almost like their voice to a degree defines them a little bit. But I remember making that first call, and he's like, "Hello, John. Yes, let's do it." And I told him, he said, "I've talked to several people about wanting to get my life story told in a comic, but no one ever comes through with it." So I said, "Well, Nikolai, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I promise you I'm going to get it done." And that's what we did. So I interviewed Nikolai extensively, just asking him about his what in his mind, his premier matches, what his life was like before wrestling, and what his life was like during wrestling, and that's what we do. And we kind of just take out of the wrestlers' voices themselves what they see as the pinnacles of their career, and that's what we try and emphasize, because some of these guys have wrestled for so long. I want to say Nikolai wrestled probably for 5 decades, or in 5 decades, and there's so much material out there. So you really have to narrow it down to what they, in their mind, see as the pinnacles of their career. And that's what we've done. Whether it be with Nikolai, who was our first, our second, who we also lost, was Bruno Sammartino. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, as you mentioned. We do the Killer Beast series, Rock and Roll Express. My dear friend who just passed away last month, Rocky Johnson. We got Rocky's book done literally like the day he passed, because he signed a bunch of his books for us to send out to some of his Kickstarter backers actually the day before he passed, and we got those sent out. So literally got it done, just enough time for him to see it and enjoy it, which was although it was sad to lose him, it was nice to know that he got to see it completed as well. Same with Nikolai. Nikolai got to see it completed as well. So
now you talk about Rocky Johnson. Do you know if Dwayne has seen a copy of this?
I know one was provided to him, and I did speak briefly with Dwayne recently, and he thanked me for doing the series for him. And we didn't really have a discussion, obviously, because of what the circumstances were. We didn't have a discussion about whether he liked it or not. I would like to think that he did, and think that hopefully I'll maybe hear from him sometime in the future about it. But yeah, he does have a copy, and we did speak about what was done for his dad, and it was a nice conversation. So.
Nice. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. So I'll have to get you a copy. I've got, several of them here at the house. I haven't done, because obviously when he passed, I haven't really done too many appearances since, so I haven't really been at shows with a lot of the books. But they'll be coming out. I'll have them with me.
Yeah, I know. We were in that show last month in Lakeland together, and
Yeah.
I could just see that because you were supposed to be there with Rocky.
Yeah. Rocky was going to join me on the second day on Sunday, which was really tough because he'd passed. I think if I'd have to think back now, I think it was about 5 days before the show is when he died. So, that was a rough one to do. But as Rocky would always say, the show must go on. So he wouldn't want me to stay home and cancel or anything like that. So the show goes on, and I was able to talk to some nice people who had met Rocky at a lot of the shows. He used to accompany me to a lot of the shows around Central Florida, which was it was a treat for me, and I think it was a treat for him because he really loved his fans. He liked to meet them. He liked to hear the stories. He liked the little kids coming up and, "Oh, you're the Rock's dad," and they want to, he was like a larger than life character, and he was a joy to have as a friend, and a pleasure to spend a lot of time with. He was really a wonderful person. So, but yeah, that show was it was nice to be there, and it was hard at the same time.
Yeah, I know when I first met him, Daytona, maybe a couple years ago. He was super nice.
Oh yeah, he's a wonderful guy. I had him in Daytona, I had him in Clearmont, had him in Jacksonville. We did a show out. It's slipping me the name of the guy who runs it. It was a mall out in, I want to say, Leesburg. We were out there. Yeah, we did a lot of things together.
Oh yeah, that was the Lake Collectors Con.
Yeah, Lake Collecticon.
Yeah. So I have another guest that's listening, and he's gonna want to hear this because he's huge on it. So tell us how this heavy metal came together.
Okay. Well, that is, I've been a fan of heavy metal since as long as my parents would let me, I guess I should say, because heavy metal came into existence back in the mid to late 70s. I want to say it was or the magazine started coming out. It was kind of based off of a French magazine that had the same layout, and I loved heavy metal, always have. And that's kind of, I don't know if everyone does it, but I'm a kind of guy that sets bucket lists. Well, at the top of my bucket list was heavy metal, and I had a couple of stabs at it, and nothing had materialized. And then right towards the end of 2019, I partnered up with a gentleman artist, very talented, from Mexico by the name of Oscar Pinto. And Oscar and I he'd done some cover work for me with horror comics and with exciting comics. He did Rock and Roll Express. He did one of our variant covers. Really talented artist. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, how would you like to put something together for heavy metal?" And obviously, he jumped at it. And so I teamed up with him and with our letterer, and this fly is still landing on my... And we sent it over, and there was an opening. For those of you who don't know how heavy metal does it now, they kind of, and I've heard it's going to change with issue 300, but they do themed issues. So it just so happened that we had done more of a wintry themed story that I called Blizzard, which if you pick up the latest issue, you can read all about it. But we just happened to have done a story that fit what the theme was at the time there at the end of the year. So we sent it in. They loved it. RG Urena is who we worked with, and the rest is history. We made it in the first issue. We're working on another story now called Eternal that we'll be sending over as well, and hopefully we'll just keep it rolling with them.
Yeah. Well, I can see Rob. He's excited. He loves heavy metal.
Yeah. Well, tell him he needs issue 297. Go pick it up. My comps haven't arrived yet. They should be here pretty soon, though. I got a notice that they're on their way. But it's a dream come true. It really is. I mean, I never would have imagined that I would get a story in Heavy Metal magazine, but it's done, and hopefully we'll keep repeating it. And now I got to put something else at the top of the bucket list, I guess.
Well, I mean, career-wise, you're kind of a journeyman, doing the whole comic book thing, which I know isn't your full-time job. Your full-time job, if I'm an attorney, right?
Yeah, I'm an attorney. I do like wills and trusts and probate. So, this to me is it's a love, and it's a nice. I don't want to just say it's an escape, but it is an escape. It's a nice segue out of the law and the stresses of that life, and it allows me to explore the creative side. I write a lot of wills and a lot of trusts and a lot of things like that, but this allows me to kind of express the creativity a little bit. And from the beginning, it's always been something I've been able to enjoy with my daughter, which for anybody who has kids out there, if you can ever find something that you can actually share with your child or with your spouse, your significant other, anything like that, like you're doing with Nicole. There's nothing better. I mean, it's one thing to do something for yourself. It's another thing to do something with or for someone else. I mean, it just really is a great feeling. So I'm blessed. I'm just lucky that I'm able to do both things, and enjoy it. And I always wanted to leave something behind. So I know that if all else fails, hopefully somebody will keep an issue of one of my books, and I'll still be around for a little bit.
Well, this kind of goes to show that in the pop culture world, that for many years people looked down on us. That I mean, you come from being an attorney. I mean, so you go to these comic cons and you see people that are doctors, lawyers, dentists, everything. I mean, but it's like now no one's afraid to come out of the woodwork and say we love this.
Yeah, well, I mean, comics have really become the mainstream, though. I mean, I agree with you. Back when we were younger, yeah, it was kind of more of a, you know, kind of hidden kind of thing, like little pleasure that people did. I mean, kids, a lot of times as a kid, though, you're innocent. You don't really care what anybody thinks. At least I didn't back then. I think times have changed now with social media, and kids can, I don't know, it can be a little different. But back then, you could read your comics all day and just put them in a box, and nobody really knew anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it's a guilty pleasure, and it's fun. I mean, just about every major television and just about every major movie out there right now is based off a comic in some way, shape, or form. So they really tie themselves in. Same with wrestling. I mean, that's what I've told these wrestlers. Really, they are like comic book superheroes. But in real life, I mean, larger than life, they jump off top ropes. They do these amazing things, feats of strength that the average human can't do. They fit right into the genre, just like so many other things. So I love seeing that more people are accepting, comics and cosplay and just allowing people to be who they are and enjoy the things they want to have without any kind of backlash or repercussion. It's a nice thing to see that. And I remember one time when I used to work at the post office when I was in college, and I never would have thought it. There was this grouchy old guy in there named Ron. I mean, I loved Ron, but he was like, think of Grumpy Cat. That was Ron. And Ron, it turned out, was also a Harley guy. He was a biker. And I hear someone. That's my wife. So Ron was kind of like a Harley guy, and I remember he was talking about all his Harley friends who were coming, and she's sneaking up behind me, and he and he kind of what you said about doctors and lawyers and stuff doing comics. Well, he says you got to understand. He goes, these Harley guys. He goes, most of them are like doctors and lawyers and accountants and all these other things too. So I don't think comics aren't the only area in the world where you actually find that it's anybody does it. Everybody does it. It's it's a nice thing, and you can kind of, so many different people can connect, and that's what I love about it too.
I think we all have an escape, no matter what profession we're in.
Yeah,
sometimes we get to look a little deeper at the cool stuff we get to do when we're not in our actual profession.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at it, we're only here one time, as far as I know. I guess I'll find out at some point later, but we only get one shot at it. So why do you want to limit yourself in what you do or who you meet or it just seems if the human lifespan is like 70 to 80 years, soak it all up, make the most of it. And don't you're the only person who can hold yourself back.
Yeah, they say you're your own worst critic.
Absolutely. I tell that to people at cons all the time. 5 years ago, I guess, what year? 2020. So it was about 5 years ago that I wrote my first comic. And in less than 5 years' time, I found myself in the pages of Heavy Metal magazine. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You just don't let anybody hold you back.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have both of these guests on because they have very similar stories.
I it's interesting to see how you can kind of come from any place and put your information out there and share with people the things that you love and have a community rally around you. I think that that's why we do what we do.
Mhm.
And well, Brian kind of pushed me into the world of conventions to do what I had always kind of wanted to do.
Yeah.
To get comics in classrooms and have kids, enjoy it. Not just superheroes, but anything that would grab their attention to get them to read. And
Yes.
so I think that once we put it out there, we find out there are a lot of people that are interested in it, and they're like, oh, well, I guess I could do something like that too. And so we're out there kind of sharing the love of all these things and have people kind of rallying around the ideas. So I mean, it's hugely important now that we have that community and build people up instead of tearing people down.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty and the danger of social media. It allows us to connect to anybody, anywhere. As long as people remember to keep their good side out. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, I'm going to keep you on, but
Okay.
I'm going to bring our next guest on so you can listen to his story because I think you're going to very connect.
Yeah, good. I look forward to it. That was going to be my question. Hopefully, I can hear when you click over.
Yeah. So
Yeah, okay.
this is what I'll do. I'll take you down, and then
Yeah.
I'll let you still be able to listen.
Sound nice, because all I'm doing right now is looking at my own ugly mug, swatting at flies. So,
All right.
okay. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. So wow, yeah, John is awesome. So I'm going to unmute Rob, and we're going to bring Rob up.
Oh, you're good.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys? How are you?
All
Hey,
right.
how are you?
John, right? He's
John.
a great guest. Got a lot to he's got a lot of knowledge. Even though his backyard sounds like the movie 1917, he's got some he's got some good stuff. I know you guys are into comics. I wanted to bring this up really quick. These are actually the two that I'm reading right now. I don't know if you guys are music fans out there, but I'm a huge fan of Bowie. I have been. This is probably the most beautiful thing I've bought in a long time. It's by Mike Allred. And this one, Harleen, which is the collected works of
Harley Quinn.
Stepan Yejic, I think his name is. This is a work of art right here.
Oh, that's pretty.
It really is. So I just wanted to bring some comics into the equation. I'm a huge comic geek on top of, being a cinephile and a horror fan and all that stuff. So those are my contributions to the show as far as comics are concerned. But
right.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate this. It's an honor, and I'm happy that you guys are, doing what you love together, and making something successful together. And I'm really happy to be a part of it. So thanks very much again for asking me.
Yeah, Rob. I mean, we've been friends for a few years now here on Facebook. Never really had a chance to meet in person yet, but I think that'll happen someday. So for our listeners,
Brian, I just want to say something to you. You had actually said to me before, quite a while ago, before he passed, you were like, I think John Schnepp would love you. And I just want you to know I will never, ever forget that sentence from you, because Schnepp is like the dude for me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that meant a lot when you said that. So thanks for that.
I wish I gotta raise one to the king of the sweaties.
There you go. I don't have anything in this glass, but it's a Joker glass, so I'll just raise it, just because.
What was it, a month before?
Yeah, it was at MegaCon.
Uh-oh. Brian? Uh-oh.
And that's kind of how I felt. It was like, just let him talk, because, I don't know, I was a little bit enamored myself, so it's definitely larger than life.
Well, anyway, guys, I'm willing to questions you got, man.
Well, let's talk about like where everything started for you.
I don't know if this is a PG rated show. I'm sure you got kids watching this stuff, so I'll try to keep it, as cool as I possibly can. Let's see. So the question was, where did I get started? Oh, I had the vocabulary of a well-educated sailor. Okay, cool. All right. So I think my journey started when I was about, God, we got to, it's like the Wayback Machine. So I was 6 years old when I was first introduced to Michael Jackson's Thriller. That was actually the first thing that I saw when I was a kid. And, the weird thing is when I was young, I was terrified of blood and, my blood, anybody else's blood, and my cousin, obviously was a little older than I was. So I remember her and her friend Elaine used to, rent, videos and stuff. And even if they were watching Nightmare on Elm Street when I was a kid, I'd scream you're watching Nightmare on Elm Street, aren't you? And my aunt would be like, no, don't watch it. He's going to freak out. Don't do it. Isn't that weird? So anyway, I was 6 years old, turning probably about 7 when I saw Michael Jackson's Thriller. And for some reason, that particular video captivated me, terrified me to death. But then there was a making of a segment where you got to see John Landis work and you got to see, all the behind the scenes stuff. So I kind of got a little bit of a grasp of that it's not real, you know what I mean? And then of course the video would come back on because it was on a loop and I'd be terrified again. I'd be I'd hide my eyes, even though I knew the truth. And then honestly from there, man, I think my dad really got me into film quite a bit. He had every movie under the sun, and I just really became enamored with directors and producers. And then, by the time I was 13, I knew what a grip was and all this different stuff. And then as I got, a little older, I started working at video stores, which I'm honored to, be able to say that. Just really just became enveloped in film and television. I just love the whole, the aspect, the art of it, and all that stuff. So back in 2010, I actually was in a bit of a life situation. I was actually homeless at the time. And I ducked into a library and I saw that this website was actually looking for a replacement journalist, because somebody was on leave or something, they were sick. And I never did journalism before, ever. Never did interviews before, anything like that. And I just, tried, I signed up. And that's pretty much how it happened. So I became this replacement journalist and I was supposed to be working with maybe 12 other people at the time. And I guess I was doing so well with the column that the other 11 or 12 people just kind of backed off. And I got the column, for a while for myself. And I was doing the best of, the latest and greatest in horror. So I talk about different toys that are coming out, different books, different this, different that. And then after a while, I just got really bored with it. And I just wanted to do something new. So with no knowledge whatsoever, never talked to a studio before, never talked to a publicist, agent, anything like that. And I have the Facebook to thank for a lot of it, but I started really wanting to talk to people that I've loved my entire life. So I started talking to Michael Rooker and Cassandra Peterson, and it's going to be name dropping, by the way. I'm sorry. But, that kind of turned into a podcast after that. I was doing that 3 times a week for about 6 months. And then I had a weird Wayne's World situation happen where this guy contacted me and said, you guys are way too good for podcasts. You should do a radio show on my extraterrestrial radio station. Which basically just means that it's online. It's not, a bunch of commercials and, one crappy song after another. And I thought it was fake for 2 months. So I didn't answer the call because I was like, that's got to be bullshit. There's no way that's real. And then I saw it again, the message that I got, and I was like, oh, wait, maybe there's something to this. And I signed on and I did that show for about 2.5 years. And we talked to a guest every week, every single week, from Barbara Crampton to William Sadler to Bill Moseley to Sid Haig to Angus Scrimm, on the 4th of July. Just the list went on and on and on. I was actually working with the two-time Emmy Award winning makeup artist. I had Donnie Cancel for 45 Grave, and when the show actually was at the end of its time, I actually had Linnea Quigley as a co-host as well. So it was pretty damn successful, I guess, for the most part. And yeah, so I did the radio show, and then I was trying to regroup. and I tried to publish a horror book series that I'd written. It was actually one big tome. I cut it up into 3 stories and worked on that for like a good 4 or 5 years. Getting screwed by publishers and then self-publishing and then finding another publisher, stuff like that.
And that was before Kickstarter, right?
No, that was actually I got signed on with a small publisher, and that didn't go very well. And then I was supposed to be working with this independent director that was starting his own publishing company. I kind of I threw the bug in his ear to do it, and I was supposed to be like, it was so exclusive. It was like, one vampire story, his story about like, Alice in Wonderland versus Wizard of Oz or something like that. And mine, which was based on witches. And that was basically like that was the line. And I was supposed to be working with a photographer who did like photography for Marilyn Manson and stuff like that when it came to the book covers and stuff. And honestly, I just felt like I was losing like, not necessarily integrity, but I was not necessarily like getting a chance to like speak my mind of how things are going to look and stuff. And it was just basically like, if you're going to do this, then, this is the way it's going to be. And I just kind of said no. And then I self-published them again. And, but the whole point is like, from where I started to where I am now, it's really all about drive, and it's about perseverance, and it's about, falling on your face and picking yourself up. It's, you got to use failure as a tool. That's actually one thing I learned from one of my heroes, Kevin Smith. Like, failure is very important. Like, not everything you do is going to be successful. So you got to keep picking yourself up and, doing it again and again and again. And that's something I've been telling, the people that have been asking me, through inbox and stuff, like, how do you do the things that you do? It's really honestly just, it's a belief in self. And, I mean, that's really all there is to it. The people around you, if they support you, you kind of got to use that as a tool to like, keep stepping up on the ladder. You know what I mean? Because it took me years to even get my foot in the door when it came to the industry, at least 5.
Exactly. I mean, there's that saying, and it's used in everything, whether it's sports or a band. You're only as good as the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have, people behind you that support you, then it works out in the end.
Yeah, for sure. And, and I know that John said, comics, doing comics is a guilty pleasure. And it kind of hurts my heart that, like a guy like that is working on something like heavy metal, and, he still has to work a regular job. I also work a regular job. I work as a server during the day. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because, like, people have whatever mentality they're going to have about you. They think you're jet setting or whatever because of the people and the things you do, whatever it is. But, in reality, yeah, you work a regular job. I have a son who's, 5, and he's on the spectrum. So, I mean, it's not like, not the reality at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a father and, all that first and foremost before anything else. So you kind of got to find the time to be able to do what you want to do. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you understand that as well, being a father.
Yeah. I had 3 kids. My oldest graduates high school, and then I have a 9-year-old and then a 5-year-old.
Yeah. But yeah, before we get into other questions and stuff, I mean, when I was coming up in the ranks, like, not everything I did was the right thing. You know what I mean? I was green, I had a different mentality and, all these different things. So I think, when it comes to whatever you're doing in terms of your, whatever you want to call it, your career, or, whatever your passions are, whatever it is, I think the honest to goodness reason, or the honest way to do it successfully is just, you have to grow with it. If you're the same that you were when you were like 30, that you are at 41, then obviously there's a real problem there. You know what I mean? So like, you're supposed to grow as a human being, but you're also supposed to be, grow as an entertainer, to grow as, an individual that, like that deals with people, or, the way you interact with fans and stuff like that. And I don't consider anybody that follows my work fans at all. Like, they're they are friends of mine. That is the vibe that I always give out, that I actually do the things that I do because I care about you guys. And I want you to, if I can have you forget about like the ills of the day for at least, 10 minutes, then I've done my job, like that's pretty much it. I just want people to be passionate and talk about things that they're passionate about.
Right. Like, I consider everything like like when you're a community, it's more than just fans. It's family.
Hmm. I agree. Um, so now I'm working with a company called Horror Web. This is a company that I stepped into last year. And for about a couple years, I'd done radio and I'd done podcasts and all that stuff. And I really honestly I don't know, I really had this bug up my ass to do a YouTube show. Like that was something I've wanted to do for a couple years. And I think my son was too young. And, when I did like Facebook Lives and stuff like this, like he would, be making noise and stuff like that. And I just knew that I wasn't able to do it that particular time period. So I kind of sat on the idea for about a couple years and came to this company Horror Web with this idea, which is kind of an honor for me because, ever since I started out in the very beginning, Dungeon Deadly Delights was actually a name that I came up with, for, my columns or my podcasts and all that stuff. So the fact that I'm able to kind of step in a new medium with this old name that I've been using for like 10 years, it truly is an honor. I mean, like it belongs to me, but still the fact that I actually, give it to people and they say, man, that's really catchy. Like, yeah, for sure. That should be the name of the show. It's really great. But Corey, the owner of Horror Web, and my producer Donovan, and everybody that's part of that company. I honestly I've never felt anything more family oriented when in this business ever in my life. They really care about the work. They care about the people within, and we just have the mentality of we just want people to have fun doing what we're doing, and obviously we want the fans to be just as passionate about what we're doing. I mean, obviously there's a success mission there and stuff like that. We're looking into making films as far as Horror Web is concerned, and short films and stuff like that. But for right now, we're really just trying to get the YouTube channel together. I'm very thankful that the show that I do with my co-host Holly has been successful. It's starting to get bigger and bigger. We have a girl who plays a character named Scarra, Damsel of the Doomed. She does these Tub of Terror reviews, and they do really well. We picked up a review company, Amaranth Productions, Shelby and Stephen Fang Moore, also based out of Austin. I'm in Georgia, by the way. But yeah, we're just really trying to build the YouTube channel, and just basically let the horror world know that there's other mediums out there that are just as hungry. You know what I mean? And that's kind of our mission statement. We're not trying to take anybody down, but we're trying to plant ourselves comfortably to be like, you know what, we're here too. Horror Web's a power, and that's kind of what we want to do with that for the most part. So.
Well, I think that's like horror, pro wrestling, and the comic like pop culture world are kind of very similar. Where for the longest time, each one was looked upon as like, oh, that's not entertainment. How do you see horror, like how it's evolving? Do you think it's going to be more mainstream, like the comic book industry?
Well, I'm 41 years old, and when I was growing up, I'm sure just like a lot of people, the true grit horror fans that grew up in the 80s and 70s or whatever. There was a time where horror was really honestly equated to porn. Like there was it was actually lower than porn for a lot of people when it came to reviewers and critics and stuff like that. I think it's really starting to become more mainstream in regards to the acceptance that it's getting from people on the outside that usually aren't necessarily horror fans. I think we're in a renaissance right now when it comes to obviously television. You got shows like The Walking Dead that've been around for God as long as I've been doing this this business. I was actually one of the first couple people that I talked to were Walking Dead people. So I kind of grew up with that show. But I'm just saying there is a renaissance when it comes to television, and films are getting better. And I think when it comes to the independent side of things, I think the independent side of horror is getting a lot more respect now when it comes to the creators and the craft and stuff like that. Like I know that like a movie like Parasite that obviously swept the awards recently. I know that that isn't necessarily a horror film, but Bong Joon-ho is absolutely one of us. So like it really like tickles me the fact that the industry is starting to look open the doors for these other masterful people that have done horror in the past. Because as you know, Bong Joon did The Host, which is like probably one of the greatest monster films ever created. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of positivity when it comes to horror. There was one that I saw the other day that absolutely like infuriated me, which very rarely happens because I know it's just a movie. But I don't know. I'm not gonna say names.
I saw the post.
I'm not gonna say names. I have met Mr. Blum, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers, so we'll just keep it at that. You can make you can make your own conclusion when it comes to what I'm talking about. But
right.
No, I think there's a lot of great horror out there. And also the fact that guys like Robert Eggers, the fact that they're able to make films like The Lighthouse, that's really amazing to me. And they're incredible films. And they should absolutely have been nominated. I think Midsummer should have been nominated. I think The Lighthouse should have been nominated for just
Hereditary.
Uh-huh.
Hereditary should have been nominated.
I think Hereditary should definitely have been nominated, and I think we're going to get to a point where that stigma is about to I think that's going to end eventually. I'm hoping, you know what I mean. Even like I said, I mentioned Parasite before, and even though Parasite isn't technically a like a horror film, like there are horror elements in it, and I think that's going to break after a while. You know what I mean? Because we lived in a time where Silence of the Lambs was obviously it's a horror film. It's an FBI agent talking to a guy who eats people to track down a man who wears the skin of women, and they're going to call it a thriller. Well, thriller and horror are kind of like a Dutch door. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think they call it thriller to kind of get it through the door, but we all know it's a horror film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was guys like Jordan Peele recently that obviously won best screenplay for Get Out and stuff, and that's great. But I really want to get to the point where we get back to awarding stories that actually deserve it, like The Exorcist when it swept the Academy Awards many years ago. I want that kind of reaction when it comes to horror, when it comes to the respect and the appreciation it deserves. It may not get there, but at least the love for it is really starting to change when it comes to the audience. I think it's in a good place.
Yeah, I know this year with horror, I mean, not off to a great start, but there are some horror movies I'm really looking forward to, especially Halloween Kills.
Absolutely, yeah. You know what? There was a couple films that came out recently that I feel like they didn't get the wrong they got the wrong end of the stick. I think Underwater was absolutely one of them. I was really hoping that would be successful simply because it was a solid vehicle for Kristen Stewart, and for some reason, her and Robert Pattinson still get shit for Twilight, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. These two have proven time and time again that they're consummate actors. The fact that they show Robert Pattinson in this awesome bat suit, and people are like, oh, I didn't know Batman was supposed to sparkle. Come on, let's get over it. It's ridiculous. If you really want to be honest, guys like Robert Pattinson are probably one of the greatest young actors of our time, and I say that with pride. But yeah, Underwater got the wrong end of the stick, obviously, because Disney, bought 20th Century Fox, and I think they didn't know how to market it properly. So, obviously there was that kind of Lovecraftian spoiler that was put out there when it comes to the end of the movie. And honestly, if they had promoted it that way, I think it would have been a more successful film. So there's been good movies that have come out. I just don't think people have gravitated towards them yet. Just like Dr. Sleep, it still boggles my mind that was a quote-unquote flop. It was an absolute masterpiece. And, everybody that was part of that production, just did a bang-up job. And, of course, Rose the Hat is probably one of the greatest Stephen King villains we've seen on the screen in like 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah, we just watched that last week and we loved it. We're gonna actually go back and watch the director's cut.
Oh yeah, awesome. So it makes it more linear when it comes to like when you're looking at it at a literary sense. I think the director's cut kind of like changes it. When it comes to that regard, it doesn't really change too much. But if you're a fan of Doctor Sleep, obviously seeing it with the additions like added to it, I think like gives you a better experience in my opinion. But Mike Flanagan's probably not if like he's absolutely my favorite new visionary in the horror genre today. Like he's just phenomenal. Everything he does is fantastic.
It was an amazing movie.
Yeah, I mean he killed it with the Netflix series.
Yeah, and I know that right now he's doing he's getting ready to do a show called Black Mass. So if you guys aren't familiar, Black Mass was actually the book that his character in the movie Hush was writing. The deaf writer played by his wife Kate Siegel. And there was actually an Easter egg in Gerald's Game, which he also directed. And the book Black Mass was over the top of her, which he was trying to find something to get her arm out of the handcuff. So it's kind of like an interesting. It's based like the Netflix series is actually based on the fake book from Hush. So I don't really know what it's going to be, but that's really exciting that he's got this kind of deals going, and then of course he's going to be filming the sequel to Haunting of Hill House, which is Bly Manor. I think immediately after that. So that guy's he's just extraordinary, and I think I've known that ever since Oculus, which was many years ago. I knew that guy was going to step up and just probably be like one of the best of the new crop.
Yeah. So, over your 10-year career, was there a few bucket list items that you had checked off?
It's interesting you mentioned bucket list because I just watched Sonic with my son the other day, and it was all about bucket list, which is interesting that they had Sonic, like have a bucket list. But anyway, I mean, I'm very grateful to say that when it comes to a lot of the conversations that I've wanted to have through the years, I think I've accomplished quite a few that I've definitely seriously wanted. Like I told you before, obviously there's going to be, that's never going to stop. Like there's always going to be people that I want to talk to. I mean, people that know me, if they're watching this, are probably going to get real sick and tired of me saying this, but one of my greatest accomplishments, obviously, was talking to Jamie Lee Curtis back in 2018. I got the opportunity to go to Austin, Texas. I did it for about 3 days. I was at the Halloween premiere. It was one of the first red carpets I will do and probably ever do. But because it was horrible, because like you're standing on a line, and like by the barrier, by the red guardrail, and just sweating to death, crammed in like a sardine with everybody else. But so like Jamie Lee came over and I got to interview her for about a good 2 minutes. You only get about 2 minutes with everybody, but yeah, that was probably like the biggest one for me. Because I was actually born in 78, October 78. I was born with Halloween, the same month, same year. I've always felt a connection to Halloween, so that was probably like one of the greatest ones for me. And as you know, Brian, I've interviewed John Carpenter twice. Rob Zombie a couple years ago. I've really talked to some really incredible people, and I'm very grateful for that. But as I tell people too, it's like when you're talking to these people, like you guys are doing a podcast now or whatever it is you're doing, if you're spending your time with celebrities, be it 10 minutes, be it an hour, whatever it is, just don't drool all over them. They don't like it. I can tell you that for a fact. That's the greatest tip that I can give anybody when it comes to celebrities. Don't drool. They will walk away. They don't like it. They really don't. But yeah, I got to accomplish some pretty amazing things, and I'm still blown away by that. When I think about the things that I got to do. I think one of the biggest things I got to do though was actually I interviewed Joe Bob Briggs probably like a year and a half ago, something like that. But the reason that was so cool is because like I got on that interview and I was just like, you know what? I want to make this guy laugh so fucking hard. Oh, sorry. I want to make this guy laugh so hard. You know, that was my mission. You know, that was my mission statement for Joe Bob Briggs. And I said something about like, you know, sorry for any, voters out there, but I was like, if you're on a cliff and you had Donald Trump's hand in one of your hands and your ex-wife's in another, who's falling? And he died laughing for like 10 minutes. And I was like, yes. Like, because I think Joe Bob is like, not only one of the most important people in the industry, but like, I mean, he's funny as hell. So the fact that they got to accomplish that, like, really, like, meant a lot to me. I think that was definitely that was a big accomplishment. Just the fact that I made him laugh. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. And I just hope, like I get the opportunity to do more.
Yeah. So, are you up to play a little 5-question trivia?
Can I say one?
Oh, okay. Nicole wants to say.
So I'm new relatively to the whole world before, aside from falling asleep on the couch with my dad when I was like 4, and waking up to the Elvira when she'd do the horror movies at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Which is a bad habit to fall asleep with the TV on, but I used to do a lot of that, and a lot of this stuff scared me because I'd see it when I was super young and probably way not old enough to understand it. But now that I watch a lot of stuff, like with Brian, because he's a huge fan.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it has to do with we have a lot to be scared of out there, and so a lot of it is kind of like a metaphor for the stuff that we are scared of. Absolutely. So I think that horror is moving in a different direction. Like I think, Midsummer was told entirely during the day. I mean, there's very little that was at night, and that this was like the first movie I'd seen where essentially everything that was scary that was happening during the day. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. So I think just to piggyback on some of that stuff you were saying, is like, I think we are talking about horror in a different relationship to the world we live in. And so when we watch things like Dr. Sleep, and when we watch things like Get Out, and when we watch things like Midsummer, we talk about the things that scare us that are honestly, truly possible in the realm of our world. Like, cultism and racism and crazy stuff like that happens. It's there. It's just putting that twist on it. It kind of like, it adds that dimension of this can't possibly happen in real life. So it's less scary than what we really have to deal with in real life.
Well, it's a great question. First of all, I just want to say that. But also, I'm really kind of hoping for 2 things. I guess I'm greedy that way. I am hoping that there is more social conversation when it comes to horror. I think it's been lacking for a long time. But even things like zombie films and things like that, that was about social class, and that was about consumerism, and that was about things like we just did a zombie episode for our show Dungeon. A couple weeks, or actually it was last week, and we were talking about how George Romero like kind of inadvertently kind of changed the game when it came to race relations in film, because Dwayne Jones' character in the original, and really had no intention of trying to beat the drum when it comes to civil rights. It was honestly just like Dwayne Jones was a fantastic actor and he wanted him in the movie. I think things are actually like, for the most part, when it comes to stories and stuff, I think a lot of it's done inadvertently. But I'm just hoping there's a lot more horror that's more pointed when it comes to politics, when it comes to all the things that are going on right now in our day and age. Things that, people are obviously terrified of. On the other coin, I'm really hoping that it kind of stays in the fun realm too, because I think, horror and sci-fi and all these different things are, kind of like a way to escape all that. I don't know. I'm just hoping there's a happy medium. You know what I mean? Not everything needs to be so pointed and artsy fartsy and all that stuff. I like, a lot of A24 films and stuff like that. But, I can watch Sleepaway Camp or something like that too. You know what I mean? Like I like things that are goofy and silly. You know what I mean? I just that's how I get my escape. But yeah, Yeah, again, it's a great question. But I think you're right. Honestly, I would call Midsummer probably one of the greatest breakup movies I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you've broken up with an ex, recently, or for those people that are anti Valentine's Day, just watch Midsummer, man. I mean, it's perfect. It's a
I
perfect
have
break.
to say that if anybody ever did that to me, you're gonna get burned to death inside of a bear. I mean, I'm sorry,
Well, that was
but
something I actually said in a post recently. I said, this should be added to the anti-Valentine's Day vernacular. And I said, like, if an ex comes to you and says, like, baby, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I want to make things right. This and well, I'd rather watch you burn like the end of Midsummer. I think that sentence should actually be added.
yeah.
It says everything you need to say.
And then the other thing that I wanted to add is that I don't follow all the same people Brian does on Facebook. So he would show me these posts you would write for on people's birthdays.
Yeah.
And I would read all this really cool stuff that you would add into the post saying this person's done run through this amazing list of things that they've done that I never even knew they had done. And I'd be like, this is it was almost poetic because it was so well written and it was so like informative in a very, I mean, long for Facebook, but short for the rest of our lives, like I'd learn all kinds of really cool stuff about people and I'd be like, oh, sometimes I could guess who it was. And then sometimes I would have to be like, I don't know who that is. And then he'd tell me and be like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know all of that. So thank you for informing us or, people like me.
Well,
who
first
are
of all,
new.
I want to thank you. Second, we're definitely going to become friends on Facebook. That's going to happen. I think the reason why I do those is because like I just really honestly have a deep appreciation for for performers and for artists and stuff like that. And I could easily just go like, hey, happy birthday, so and so, like a lot of people. But I feel like I think the reason I do it, like God, this sounds just so pompous, like everything I'm probably gonna say, but before like Brad Pitt becomes Brad Pitt, I want you to know how he got there. What schooling did he, what exactly like, did he have to achieve? What kind of lifestyle did he have and that kind of stuff. Not everything, like you don't just like you're just not born a success. You have to like, you have to, raise yourself up and you have to go through all these different pitfalls and wins and all that stuff to, to get to where you are. And honestly, a second reason I do it is because I don't know. I just like, like I said before, I mean, there's so much bad, horrible shit that's on, social media. I just want people to forget for a minute, and just talk about something that they love and they're passionate about, be it an actor, be it a movie anniversary or whatever it is. And I'm very fortunate that, I work with a company called Horror Web because now I'm able to take, these kind of milestones and stuff. And I'm doing a video segment now. I haven't done one recently, but I'm doing a segment called Celebrations of Slaughter, which is, like kind of the video version of all that stuff that I'm doing online. But yeah, I mean, really, it's just, it's just to keep it, keep the community happy, like you got this stuff going on. You got, people, throwing shit out there that's supposedly like, this like Earth killer asteroid's going to hit us. And like, where are you getting all this shit? Like, honestly, you know what I mean? So I try to keep things on a positive tip for people.
An asteroid's not to come and hit us?
What's that?
So an asteroid's not coming?
No.
Oh.
It's supposed to come the day after Valentine's Day or something.
They have these websites, where you can fact check. You should probably do that before you post stuff.
Okay, I should delete this post then.
Yeah, supposedly, NASA had actually said like, hey, you guys don't need to worry. It's probably, something like that wouldn't happen until like 2400. So we got some time. But yeah, I just like to keep the community happy. I prefer happier people in life than shitty people.
It's funny though, because as an educator, this is totally related because we talk about teaching our kids how to be smart about the information they're using. And I'm like, every time I see something on Facebook, I'm like, this is why our kids don't know anything. This is why they figure they can repost stuff on BuzzFeed and figure that it's truth. I'm like, not real.
Yeah, that's what John was saying. It really is. It's like I got a lot of great things out of social media, but at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of like, just really hateful stuff too. And,
Mhm.
I think a lot of the hateful stuff kind of overshadows all the positives for the most part. So yeah, it's, like you guys are doing the show or, whatever it is, just like, you just want to keep your audience happy. That's why you do this. You just want them to, kind of forget about life's ills for a minute. That's what entertainment is. We're doing our job.
It was funny though, because like I'd been doing comics in the classroom for almost what, 4 years,
Yeah.
and nobody would follow anything I was doing that I knew. Like if they followed me, it's because they were friends from whenever, or because they were also teaching and they were like, how can I do this in my classroom? Because it seems like fun. But then I had people like once Brian went public with Reels and Heels, he was like, I had people come up and follow us that and ask about it that don't talk to me on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, a guy came up to me when I was in the courtyard doing duty with the kids in the morning. And he's like, well, where can I follow your podcast? And I said, we won't be live on anything on Spotify yet until like April 1st.
Yeah.
And he is like, oh, okay. And I said, but we're on Facebook Live and we can, you can follow us that way. And he's like, oh, cool, I'll check it out. And I'm like, what? Like, and so, community is important, and keeping people happy and just giving a forum to discuss things, I think is awesome. So bringing people on and learning cool stuff. That's why I end up not saying anything like right away. Cause I'm like, I'm just listening to all the cool stuff you guys have done, because it's like, oh, well, I can see a lot of how people are similar, and how I'm similar, and it helps me give have my own talking points, because Brian knows more stuff than I could possibly ever know. Like, he has way more time on his hands, I think, than I do,
Well,
and maybe more brain cells.
Well, first off, that's one thing I will tell you. Like, if you're trying to get a review for your show, if you're trying to get a review for your book or whatever it is, like, or even get people to view your stuff, who've been following you for years and years, like, sometimes it's like pulling teeth just to get them to do it. It's crazy. It's like, you like my work, but you won't, like, you won't drop me a line as far as, like, just a nice critique or whatever. Like, even if it's a bad one, like, you know what I mean? Like, they won't do it. They just will not do it. So you really got to, you've really got to push the envelope when it comes to your marketing and the way you, approach things and stuff like that. And sometimes it's going to seem a little too pressing, you know what I mean? Because you're going to have to say the same thing like 20 times over. Like, yeah, watch my show, do this, whatever. And I guess, like at a certain point, it just kind of becomes subliminal and somebody's like, okay, fine. Like, just stop posting. You're like, Jesus Christ. And the second thing is, what was the second part? I'm sorry.
I don't remember.
No,
I don't know. I was listening and I was like, I
yeah.
totally understand.
The second part is, the second part I wanted to say is, like, I mean, I'm not a celebrity by any means, like if my work is appreciated, I absolutely like, I love that aspect of it, and, like I'm just a horror fan, just like everybody else. And, that's the way I want it to be. Like, no matter what I do, you know what I mean? If I write a major script and it gets picked up and it becomes a movie, whatever it is, I just want to be a horror fan first and foremost. That's what I always want to be. Or, a genre geek or whatever you want to call me. I don't ever want to, people to think that, they're below me, because they're not, and it really is honestly about just supporting other artists. And I love when people do that. I love when people like help people's Kickstarters, and I love when people like, actually like, lend their hand to, help help people out with their own dreams and stuff like that. And it's happening a lot more sporadically now. Um, I remember when I, like I was telling you about my book series, I remember when I first mentioned it, like 3 people actually cared. Like they were like, yeah, all right, cool. So it took like 5 years for, like to actually like, get like a, nice group of numbers of people like, that were saying like really cool stuff about the book and stuff like that. It took a long, long time, you know what I mean? And everything you do is going to take time, be it, playing a sport, a musician, whatever it is. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast, I wish people just grew up, like people obviously grow up talented and they obviously have something to, provide to the world. But I also wish that, somebody could just go, well, I'm going to do this today. And then like the same day, it's like, 100,000 subscribers, or whatever. It's like, you know what I mean? It's just not that way. It's going to take a long time for anybody to do anything.
I think that's like kind of the main problem with a lot of people. They think, oh, I'm just gonna go on YouTube and like my video will go viral.
No,
I don't.
we're on episode 22 of my show, man. And I just told you, recently that, the numbers are just now starting to climb, after episode 22. It takes time, like you just got to believe in what you're doing. And,
I mean, there are those people that, think, they can go on Instagram. I mean, if you show some skin, then you get a lot of followers. I mean, I do see a lot of that, but.
That's another thing that's going on too. And, I'm not trying to say, like I've never downgraded the sex industry. Like, sex work is work, straight up. You know what I mean? But yeah, there is this trend going on where, at first it used to be like, hey, I did a movie in my backyard and I'm a scream queen too. And I think that's why a lot of scream queens that literally like got the title were kind of pissed because they were like, she did a movie for like, $20, like in, somebody's, like in their woods in the backyard or something. She's a scream queen too. I think it's the same thing with, I don't know. It seems like, especially for women, and, if it's done in a respectful, like, strength way where they're actually getting something from it, like, in terms of, not feeling downgraded and, like still feeling powerful to a certain degree, hey man, more power to you. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of, females in the industry that are like, hey, I write, like for horror, for this horror like website or whatever. But yeah, you can also go on OnlyFans for $5 and see me in my bra. Like, it happens a lot. And if it's a selling point, it's a selling point. If it helps, you be successful, then hey, I'm not a prude, but it does happen quite a bit. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So,
just so people know, I'm not doing that. So, point anybody.
Well, there was that one time that you had a little too much to drink.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, he deleted it.
Oh, well, you had more than one time. It doesn't get caught on video.
Oh, okay. So we have 5 questions here. We want to do.
One time, Brian, if you remember, I think it was just recently. It was David Bowie's anniversary, and I was showing people my the Bowie tattoo that I have on my chest. I think that was the only time. But yeah, you won't see me dropping trowel anytime soon on OnlyFans.
So you ready to play a little game here?
Oh yes, sir. Now this is where things get interesting, and I'm going to get destroyed.
All right, so let's see here. We're going to go with question number 1. What news organization does Gail Weathers work for in Scream?
Oh, man. God, I wish there was people like, that could come up and like just scream at me right now. What organization?
Okay. Stop.
I don't know. Pass. Go to the next one.
All right, we'll pass. All right, number 2. An urban legend.
It's like my least favorite of the franchise. Absolutely.
Okay. In urban legend, what floor does Sasha go to in the radio station as she's being chased by the killer?
Oh, Jesus Christ. What floor?
Yes.
Oh my God.
How many floors did we scream at her not to go upstairs?
What floor? What floor? Radio stations? There's probably like 100 like freaking like root floors of the radio. I don't know, 20.
Okay, go.
All right, we'll go to the next one.
I really think are you guys, just so you know. This is pretty deep.
But he'll know this one.
My
all right, go ahead. You can read this one.
What is Helen and Dylan reading?
Heather.
Oh, that's what I said.
What is Heather?
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. Sometimes I read through my glasses that I still haven't figured out how to use. What is Heather and Dylan reading at the end of New Nightmare?
Oh, that's the script.
That's correct.
Well, like earlier on in the story, they were reading. I think it was Grimm's Fairy Tales, Hansel and Gretel, or something like that. And yeah, the script was the last thing they read.
Yeah.
I'm the smartest man alive.
You want to read number 4?
And I know what you did last summer. What color is Helen's bathing suit that she wears in the contest?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Beige? No?
No.
I don't know. It's Sarah Michelle Gellar. I know that, I think. I don't know.
I don't.
It had something to do with aquatic. I know the pageant had something to do with like it was an ocean theme. I know that.
Yeah. All right. I think you can get I think you'll get this one. I'm pretty sure. I'm confident.
All right.
What is the name of Tiffany Spider in Bride of Chucky?
Tiffany Spider?
Yeah, her pet spider.
Oh man. It was a tarantula. I know that.
Actually,
because I remember it was on what you call his face during the movie, and he goes "Ah!" and he screams. Damn it. Was it Charles? Was it Charles?
No.
I think it's the feminine version, Charles.
Fucking movies.
All right, so we'll go back to that first one.
The most famous spider.
All right, so the first question was, what was the news company that Gail Weathers works for in Scream? It's Top Story.
I have no clue. Is it Top Story?
Top Story.
Is that from Scream 3?
From all of them.
It was always Top Story. It was all of them. That was the news company that she worked for.
Oh, I thought you were saying that she like switched to like another company or something. I thought that
No.
was... Okay.
And then the second question was the urban legend question about what floor does Sasha go to in the radio station as she's being chased by the killer? The third floor.
Oh, the third floor?
The third floor.
It had to do something with superstition. I knew that. It had to be either 13 or you know, like a room, or you know, like a room that's usually like taboo, I guess, in a hotel or something like that.
And then the I Know What You Did Last Summer, she was wearing a black bathing suit.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the name of the spider was Charlotte.
Charlotte. God damn it. You know what? Oh man. Well, I got murdered. Which is fitting for a horror guy, I guess. Yeah, that's appropriate. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if there's no other questions, let's see. Do you have anything else, Brian?
Well, what is your end goal when people are they're reading, they're at your funeral, what do you want what do you want like it to say like about you?
Oh, I'm gonna get like hydraulics or something in my coffin so I could just pop up or something. Like, I don't know. No, man. You know what? Honestly, when I die, I just want people. I mean, I want people to feel like, not only if, that I, like accomplished something and I made people happy and stuff, but you know what, honestly, like I want people to be happy at the funeral. I want there to be like, some sort of merriment and mirth and stuff like that. I want there to be a celebration as opposed to just people just, like just down in the dregs, like, upset, for my passing and stuff like that. I want people hopefully to, see that everything I've done, for, for, a certain part of my lifetime has been about, hopefully becoming a better person, learning to be a father, learning, like, how not to be a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, I there was a good part of my life where like, I was just, it's just a mess, man. Like, former drug addict and all that stuff. And, I've been clean for a very, very long time, and I'm happy, and I have no intention of going back to that lifestyle at all. I'm probably, thankfully, the healthiest I've ever been. And I don't know, I don't think I look too bad for 41. So if I'm gonna age like, Paul Rudd or something like that, then I'm all right with that. That's good for me. But yeah,
I'll be happy to age like Paul Rudd.
I just want people to be happy. That's what I want when I pass. That everything I've done has hopefully been a celebration for the most part, when it comes to film and stuff. And it would be cool if people in the industry were there. It'd be nice. That'd be cool too. I wouldn't see it, so how the hell would I know? You could honestly, you could throw my body in the middle of a cannibalistic circle jerk for all I care.
All right, let's see here. One more question I do want to ask you.
Sure.
What is your career end goal? Like, is there still that major thing that you want to hit?
You know what? I think I want what everybody else wants. I think I want what John wants. John was mentioning it too. I mean, you want everything you do to be successful. To a certain degree. If you can actually make money doing what you love, that's fantastic. You know what I mean? If there was one day where I can actually take my regular workaday job and just to say this was great, but now I'm getting to do what I love, and that's what I'm going to do. I think that's obviously the point where I want to be now. As far as the industry is concerned, I never want to stop. I've got I got a lot of stories in this head. I got a lot of dreams in this head and goals and stuff like that I haven't accomplished. If I can do this, if I could actually become like a 60-year-old man or whatever doing horror and things in pop culture, I would be okay with that. I'd be quite happy with that. But yeah, there's really no end game. I just love doing what I do. That's pretty much it. Anybody?
There shouldn't ever be an end game, I think. Like, our lives, our journeys of where our experiences take us. So it shouldn't be an end game. It should be a continuance of the things that you enjoy and want to pursue and move forward towards. So I think that's probably one of the best questions.
She's got it. She's got it right there. That's pretty much how I look at it. Like, you just, like if you love something, if you love your wife, if you love your job, if you love your career, whatever it is, like, why quit? You know what I mean? When it becomes miserable, that's when you go like, yeah, like this sucks. Like, I got to do something else. But yeah, I love doing the show, bi-weekly. I mentioned to you before, Brian, that I'm, getting back into the podcast realm. I told you, if you're going to listen to the podcast and you got kids around, make sure to wear headphones. Don't listen to our podcast when we do that. It's called Dungeon After Dark. One of my heroes, growing up was Howard Stern. That was one of the reasons I did podcasts and did radio and stuff like that. Is because of guys like that. So this is kind of my way of, my co-host and I, Holly, to kind of branch out from the YouTube show where we follow rules and regulations, and we just want to do mature, R-rated conversations and stuff like that. So that obviously the main thread throughout will be horror, but if I want to talk about Fantasy Island or something like that, then I can do it. And I there you go. There's your spoiler. I just said the movie that I couldn't stand.
Oh.
But yeah, so the Dungeon After Dark. So you guys can catch the Dungeon of Deadly Delight show on YouTube bi-weekly. We do it every Sunday. We started dropping the show. We started dropping the episodes at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Because as I said before, we were really excited. We wanted to do something different as far as YouTube, and wanted to have kind of like a show feel when it comes to when we drop every episode. So it comes every Sunday, just like clockwork, and that's what you guys can check it. We have an episode coming on February 23rd, where we knock out the big three, because we actually did a werewolf episode a long time ago. We just did the zombie episode in tribute of the fears of the coronavirus and stuff like that. And now we're doing vampires. So vampires is going to be our episode next week. And you can catch the Dungeon After Dark podcast in March. That'll be on iTunes and Stitcher Premium and iHeartRadio, which is really funny because that's a family channel. I think we're probably going to hit a few times by the FCC. Probably, I don't know. But yeah, man, I love what I do. I love horror. I love the fans. Thank you guys very much for this honor of like talking to me, and it really just tickled me that you guys wanted to talk to me because honestly, who the hell am I?
I want to know what was it like talking with John Carpenter? Because I've heard so many great stories about the man that he.
John Carpenter it was an interesting story because as you know, I have an autistic toddler. So I actually forgot, and I've never done this before. I had the opportunity to interview John Carpenter, who actually gave me his phone number, and he was like, yeah, this sounds great, because I, contacted Storm King, his production company. They came back to me like, yeah, John wants to do this, and gave me his phone number and stuff like that. So I actually forgot the date. So I got not a text, but an answer machine message from John Carpenter that I still have on my phone as a reminder never to do this kind of shit. Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't see the kid there. I look just
That's all right.
Never to do this kind of stuff. And so I wasn't going to do the interview because I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, John's like really annoyed. Like, what am I going to do? And my son's mother was like, you better call him back. And I'm like, I'm not calling back John Carpenter. You're crazy. Like, that's not happening. So then I kind of sat it on it. I probably sat on it for a good 25 minutes. And I finally bit the bullet, and I was like, fine, I'm going to call John Carpenter. So I had to call John Carpenter, my favorite director of all time. And I had to be like, John, listen, I am so sorry, my son, this and that. And I'm just telling him what happened. And he was very cool. He was like, hey, I'm a father too. I get it. I understand. So we set it up for the next day. And John, we were talking about his music the first interview. That was actually what we were talking about because he'd actually put out some music for Sacred Bones at that point. I think it was the first record him and his stepson had done together. So we talked a lot about his music. But yeah, really, really down to earth. I would say John's very hippie-ish. I think the second interview was actually a lot more prominent because that's when we got to talk about Halloween and we got to talk about all this stuff. And John is of the mind of, hey guys, I'm happy you guys love it, but you know what? If they want to give me money, they could put UFOs in that freaking movie. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I really don't. He doesn't have the same passion that we have for his films. Like he's just like, hey, I love doing them, but if you guys want to pay me some money, then you want Michael Myers to fight a werewolf? You go right ahead. I don't care. Seriously. He's an interesting guy for sure. But yeah, to piggyback off of you, Brian, man, I can't tell you how elated and excited I am for Halloween. I know that the screening did a hell of a job when it came to the the pre-screening. Before anybody had seen it, they had a small audience to check out the movie.
Actually, one of my friends was at that screening in Hollywood.
Yeah, there were no issues, Brian. None. It was a perfect movie. And I think somebody had mentioned, I think it was James Jude Courtney or somebody, I can't remember who it was, who plays the new Michael Myers, who I actually interviewed as well. He said this Halloween Kills is like Halloween on meth.
Oh.
Like it is like high octane, exciting, and I'm super stoked for those movies. That's probably obviously my most anticipated movie. Right now, recently, I'm actually really excited for Elizabeth Moss and the Invisible Man because the Dark Universe was such a debacle, and I'm really hoping that they can kind of pick up the slack when it comes to Universal monsters, and it's kind of an interesting concept, incorporating abuse, and things like that into the equation. I think this might be a solid movie, and God bless Lee Winnell. If you guys haven't seen Hardware and you guys have doubts when it comes to this film, go watch Hardware, directed by Lee Winnell, and I guarantee you will be a cheerleader when it comes to the Invisible Man. This guy can do no wrong. It's going to be a fantastic movie.
And
So.
don't touch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a supporter of Jason Blumhouse. I mean, he knows what to do with these horror movies and movies in general. You know, smaller budgets, and
Well,
he knows well some.
No, you know what, Jason Blum, I got to interview when I got to meet him at the Halloween premiere in 2018. Really sweet guy. Obviously very business savvy. A lot of people, not to throw him out there, like throw him on a pike or whatever, but um, some people would, I think in the industry call it slum house or whatever because they have a small budget and they don't really pay the people that work on the films and stuff like that. I don't know that for real. I've never heard that physically. That's neither here nor there. But he's very savvy, and he puts shit out like Fantasy Island or whatever. You know what I mean? Because even if that movie makes $12 million, $13 million, it's successful. You know what I mean? And then he gets to do the bigger movies that like he wants to do. He can do the franchise movies like Halloween and stuff like that. So, I mean, I was just, my feeling about Blumhouse is I was just kind of hoping that, there would be an opening when it comes to other production companies that put out horror. You know what I mean? Because it seems like everything is like from the producer from Get Out or the director of this and this and this and this. It's all Blumhouse. Like that's the main horror hub for horror films. And I'm really hoping that opens up and expands, because before it was like, it was Paramount, it was Warner Brothers, it was this, it was that, it was this, New Line Cinema. But, it seems like, that is the factory where horror is made. That's where the chocolate's made, is Blumhouse. And I'm really hoping that expands and opens up a little bit more. But yeah, very intelligent, smart businessman for sure. No question about it.
Yeah, and I think that was everything.
I don't know how we got a guest on our show that was
Oh,
not invited.
yeah. This is Oliver. He's our 5-year-old,
This is our next
Oh,
fan.
and he loves horror.
Oh, you like horror? What's your favorite villain, buddy? What do you like? Who do you like?
No, what was your favorite one?
You like Michael Myers?
The bad guy.
Jigsaw.
He likes Jigsaw.
Who?
Everybody.
Jigsaw. He likes them all, though.
Oh, Jigsaw.
Jason. He
Oh,
talks about
yeah.
Michael Myers.
Okay, yeah. Before we go, I have deep faith that Chris Rock will give us a good Saw movie. I really do. We'll see. But that trailer was pretty captivating.
The trailer was pretty good.
Yeah. Because everybody was, everybody seemed to complain.
Okay.
I remember, I think it was like a year ago, 2 years ago, and obviously, Friday 13th as a franchise is in, development hell because of Victor Miller and the, the rights and stuff like that. But I remember when people were like bitching because, LeBron James wanted to produce a Friday 13th movie, and they're like, they were just upset because it was LeBron James who, obviously, he dressed up like Jason one year, came out in the court dressed as Jason, stuff like that. And I was just like, dude, who cares? If he wants to produce a movie and give us like a Friday 13th movie, let him do it. Like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna throw a rock in Jason Voorhees' hand and make him shoot baskets? Like, is it gonna be Space Jam? No.
A lot of people don't understand what a producer's role really is. And I think that's why people were complaining.
Yeah. Actually,
I mean, most of the time, producers are, the financiers, or, they call, they make a phone call and they get a producer credit.
Yeah, I would like to see Space Jam with Jason Voorhees. We kind of got Jason X.
So that would be interesting. Actually, I was going to say there is a sequel I am wanting to see, but it will never be made.
What's that?
Freddy versus Jason.
There was I don't know if you knew this or not, but I guess there were storyboards or something like that. But originally it was supposed to be Pinhead that pops up out of hell at the very end of the movie, and it was supposed to be Jason versus Freddy versus Pinhead or something like that. I like Freddy versus Jason. Does it hold up? Probably not. But it was fun. It was really fun. It gave you what you wanted as far as as far as a fun, story with those two characters. I don't know. I don't know if I really want any other Versus movies though. Let's just keep them. Let's just keep them singular for the most
Yeah.
part.
Well, what about a sequel to the '09 Friday the 13th? I know Jared Padalecki actually wanted to do a sequel.
Well, when it comes to what happens with Friday 13th, we're not going to know probably for the next couple months because it's it's in lawsuit hell right now. But I'm really hoping. I don't know if you knew this or not, but one of my co-hosts for my YouTube show was actually Tommy McLaughlin, who was a friend of mine for years, and he directed Friday 13th Part 6. Jason Lives. He actually has a script, which is a direct sequel to Part 6. And if you guys aren't familiar with Tommy McLaughlin, I think Tommy's was probably more along the lines of, say, Deadpool or something. Like, his Jason, kind of broke the fourth wall. You know what I mean? When it comes to, when it comes to satire, when it comes to comedy, it was very tongue in cheek, compared to the others. I think it was more on par with, say, Jason X, which was, it had comedic, undertones and stuff like that. But Tommy's, version is definitely a fan favorite. So I would really like to see a second script be made. I think that I'm hoping that's where it goes. And of course, you hire Derek to play Jason Voorhees. Because just like James Jude is Michael Myers. For the new crowd, Derek Mears is awesome. He's awesome in the role. I had a really deep hatred when I first saw the original Friday the 13th or the remake of Friday the 13th, and then I actually saw it. Like a couple years later, and I appreciate it quite a bit. I appreciate what he's trying to do, and interestingly enough, I feel the same way for the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I think there's a lot of really solid stuff in there. Because if you remember, Freddy Krueger kind of became the Bugs Bunny of horror, and it became really silly and goofy and stuff like that. And for what it's worth, it's not the perfect remake, and there's a lot of problems with it. But it brought Freddy Krueger back into the darkness. You know what I mean? It was a dark movie, and that's what they were gearing towards. And honestly, I think he did a bang up job for the most part. And when it comes to Freddy, I think that they should probably give Jackie Earle Haley a second chance with a better script and a better makeup job. I think really that's all there is to it. I think he did a fantastic job as Freddy for the most part. And it's got a better ending than the original. Because if you remember, Ronnie Blakely's blow up doll gets pulled through a door. You know what I mean? And in the remake, it was actually Connie Britton standing by a mirror, and he sticks his claws through her face and pulls her through the mirror. I thought that was dope. That was a dope ending. I know a lot of people don't like that remake, but whatever. It's all good.
The remake was script issue. I was okay with the casting.
Yeah, I think it was just a weak script. I think it was just
a better. Yeah.
It was just a weak script, but if you guys recall, even since 1984, it was always implied that Freddy Krueger is not only a child murderer, he's a pedophile. He's a sick dude. And the fact that they were the fact that they were actually incorporating that kind of stuff into the remake, that was obviously that was Wes Craven's original intention with that character. Which even to this day, many, many, many years later, it still kind of weirds me out when I see a kid wearing a Freddy Krueger costume for Halloween. I'm like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. But yeah, honestly, as far as remakes are concerned, I'd really like to see Night of the Comet get remade.
I love that movie.
I do too, but it's very dated, and I'd really love to see that movie get remade. Other than that, I really don't. I don't have an issue with remakes. The whole thing is somebody said, Sam Raimi had stated before, when it comes to remakes, it's basically you're standing by a campfire, just telling stories to each other. Nobody's gonna say it the same way than the other person. You know what I'm saying? So that's what a remake is. It's a rendition of a classic story that's just told differently. So there's bad remakes and there's good remakes, but I don't have an issue with I'm not the one out there screaming, there's too many goddamn remakes,
Yeah,
It is
well,
what it is.
when we do our audio podcast, that's actually going to be a topic we're going to talk about, remakes and the whole. Everybody complains that Hollywood's out of ideas and stuff, and I think that'll be a good topic to actually sit down and really dissect.
I would love to be a part of that. I got some thoughts. Definitely got some thoughts, but like I'm not on the hate train when it comes to stuff like that.
Hollywood's been doing it for years.
Yeah, I'm not on the hate train when it comes to stuff like that. In our vampire episode that's coming up next Sunday, I'd mentioned that I was never on that weird like Twilight hate train. The fact that adults getting angry about something that's geared for a 15-year-old, it's just stupid. It really is just stupid.
Well, like we say, you're only as good as your source material in the first place. So, like even as a reader, as a person who read the book, like the only book out of that entire series that I enjoyed was New Moon, and it was just because it was about werewolves. That's really seriously the only reason. The other book was pretty trite. Like it really was. Like get a thesaurus. It's really not that hard. Like come up with something else. There's many ways to say the same thing if you're going to repeat it 500 times.
Sure, absolutely.
So.
But the other thing too is like if it's going to bring a brand new audience to the horror genre, like I say, hey, more the merrier. If it's gonna, if you're going to introduce your kids, when it comes to vampirism through Twilight, and then they go and they watch, the Lost Boys or whatever it is, and they become a fan of vampires, then that's a win. I have no hatred towards that kind of stuff.
All right.
Okay, but there should be some things that are sacred that you don't touch. Like,
oh yeah,
don't
like Jaws?
touch Jaws. Don't touch Lost Boys. I don't want to see a new Lost Boys. I don't want to see anyone other than Kiefer Sutherland in that role. Like,
well, don't watch the CW show then, because they're doing a CW.
I'm not loving it, But also,
well, they're gender swapping
to be,
the CW show.
Okay, well, I don't mind the gender swapping because it's a reimagination. It's not even a remake. But like, I have no problem with. What was I trying to say? Where was I going? I jumped on the train and then it pushed me off. Damn it. I lost it. So now I lost it. But like, people said, well, when Vampire Diaries came out, they said, oh, well, that's just it's because of Twilight. And I said, no, actually, L.J. Smith wrote that series of books when I was 11 years old. I read them when I was 11 years old. So
yeah, Vampire Diaries
predates Twilight, and it was a better written book, and it was I thought, better written show, even though it was only loosely based on the books. But
well, like I felt the same way. I felt the same way about True Blood. Like that was a great show until like they didn't even just jump the shark; they jumped over an entire ocean. That show got really, really stupid really quick. But when it comes to horror, it's just really honestly about preference. Like you may not like something, but somebody else will like something. I'm sure there's somebody that like Fantasy Island out there. I want to meet them and shake their hand because I don't know. Just the fact there is a fan out there. But yeah, like when I was growing up, not necessarily growing up, but I was like in my like late 20s or something like that. I was always a champion of Jennifer's Body. Like when everybody hated that movie. Like Megan Fox is terrible. She's this, she's that. Blah blah blah. It was just an awful script. Fuck Diablo Cody and all this other stuff. I love Jennifer's Body, and now like it's got like a massive fan base. That see it. For it's feminine aspects and all these different things. You know what I mean? It just takes time, I guess. For the most part, when it comes to these things, like The Thing was not a success when it first came out. Nightbreed, that celebrates its 30th anniversary, was a complete flop when it came out.
Near Dark got lost because of Lost Boys.
That was a really good. It was a good movie.
I love Near Dark.
But if you think about it, though, like I think it took everybody talking about these movies in an aspect of like what they meant to different creators and different people, and then people were like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't the stupid campy thing that I thought. Because I honestly, like when I first watched Nightmare on Elm Street, I thought it was kind of nice that Robert Englund had a cheeky way of making a joke when it was kind of intense, because it bridged that line of horror in comedy, because sometimes it's so scary that you just want to laugh at yourself for the dumb thing you do. And so, you know, it was kind of like, you know, when he dumps the TV on her head, and he makes the comment about was it MTV? I can't even think of the line.
Prime time.
Welcome to prime time, you know. Like
That one.
I mean, little things like that, it makes you kind of laugh and forget that you're scared for a minute. And maybe more so because I was a kid when I saw it, because I was young. But, you know, it made it a little less scary and a little bit more, you know, digestible for someone like me. And so I didn't get scared. You know, things that were really like heavy, like what when Brian made me watch Hostel. And I appreciate Eli Roth. I mean, I appreciate Eli Roth for everything.
I can see that being rough.
But I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, you also, right around that same time, you made me watch High Tension. At the same time, and I'm like, why are you damaging my psyche? Like, I was not in a good place after I watched those movies. So
I gotta say, the High Tension had probably the best horror twist I've seen in a long time.
that movie scared the hell out of me.
Well, I love High Tension, and I do have appreciation for Hostel. There's a lot of things. We did an episode a long time ago. We had these you know, we had this great couple on, very sweet. They were doing a documentary about like hardcore horror, and that's what they did. They did like, you know, like Human Guinea Pig and stuff like that. I don't watch that kind of shit. I'm not necessarily a gore hound per se. I would never watch like I had to, you know, for an article like years ago, but I would never watch a Serbian film again. There's a lot of things that I won't watch when it comes to, you know, like say something like, you know, affecting a child or something like that. I really have an issue with that kind of stuff. And I'm not a serial killer fan or hound whatsoever. I don't like that stuff either. I'm not, you know, like, you know, I don't have tattoos of like Charles Manson and stuff like that. I just, you know, hey man, if that's your bag, that's your bag. I know a lot of people are into that kind of stuff. You know, they're into the psyche and shit like that. But I'm not that person. I think the reason why I love horror is because it's probably the greatest form of storytelling. You know, like when it comes to imagination and when it comes to characterizations and stuff like that. And I also love the behind the scenes aspect. So when I see something, I'm automatically thinking to myself, like, wow, how the hell did they do that? You know what I mean? And I want to know right away. You know, so, you know, although I'm okay with a lot of blood and stuff like that, like, you know, that's not really what drives me to horror. But, you know, like, it's just the nature of the beast. You know, like, obviously there's going to be a lot of bloody films out there, but I'm a fan of the original Halloween. Like, I'm a die-hard, like, loyalist fan of the original Halloween. There's not one drop of blood. Not one. You know, and that's something I think a lot of people forget, you know, for being a slasher film. Like, it's got no blood, like, at all.
Yeah, we've been watching a lot of documentaries on horror films, and a friend of ours just got their Blu-ray of In Search of Darkness.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to watch it. But, you know, there's the show on Shudder that Eli Roth hosts.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that was kind of an interesting, you know, take on a lot of the stuff that scared me when I was a kid. Like, I mean, the stuff that scared me when I was a kid was stuff that doesn't scare me now. It's kind of ridiculous in retrospect, but the stuff that still scares me to this day, like I have seen. Okay, well, I will in a second, but like I've seen Seven about 3 times, and every time I see that movie destroys me as like a human. Because it
let me ask you a question about that, because I want to get your perspective on this. Because we know what kind of individual Kevin Spacey is in real life. Do you think that should actually, like, you know, become a situation of you not watching their or following their work anymore when it comes to, like, you know, past stuff? Would you never watch Seven ever again simply because of who Kevin Spacey is? I was always just curious how people
No, and it's not because of Kevin Spacey. I think it's because of the topic, like where he leads people to the end.
Well, I
It's
think
like,
he wants to know about like because of it, I have to separate the art from the artist.
Like, say for you were a fan of Bill Cosby's comedy or something like that. Does that stop you from listening to Bill Cosby ever again?
no.
No. Okay.
No, and as a woman, I know that's a huge, like, ridiculous thing, and as a mother, I know it's a huge ridiculous thing to say, but like, I don't think I would not watch something because they were accused or even found guilty of something. Like, that was a different time, and you have to separate that moment on screen from the real life aspects of it, because I think it would be the same thing as blaming, not
Like,
watching The Dark Knight because Heath Ledger killed himself. I mean, like, these are things like they're two separate things. Like, I will still always enjoy the Cosby comedy that was about his kids in the shower and the dentist bit. Like, I'll always enjoy that. And I think I'll always enjoy Seven for the very fearful, like, real life crazy that can go into that performance. But am I a fan of some of the other stuff? Like, I watch American Beauty in a whole different way now. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that movie, like, maybe not Seven, but I watched that movie in a whole different way.
Well, some of my favorite movies, like, Planet Terror, Pulp Fiction, all this stuff, like, Kill Bill, like all of these movies that I love, like start off, with the Weinstein Company, and you're like, ooh.
Mhm.
but I'm not gonna stop watching, like Pulp Fiction. Like, that's my favorite movie of all time. I'm sorry the guy that produced it is a complete and utter scumbag, but I like this movie. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, and that's the whole thing. Just because somebody's money made something doesn't necessarily mean that thing is dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I agree.
I mean, you have to assume that. I don't know. I think that we carry a little bit too much baggage when it comes to that, and it's like, just enjoy something for the sake of enjoying something, and not because of whatever baggage is tied to it.
Well, I think we put a lot of stake in celebrity too. You know what I mean? That was the, like when Brian, and I were talking about, like, the people I interviewed and stuff like that. When I get to, like, kind of break these people down to the, like, the not necessarily the least common denominator, but when I get to talk to them as friends and, hear about their issues and, the fact that they, sometimes you have to do a shitty movie because you have a second mortgage, or or Lance Henriksen called it, years ago when he was on my radio show, he called them alimony movies. That's what he called them. Sometimes you got to do an alimony movie. You know what I mean? Like, so when you really, get to know these people for who they are and break down the star status, that's like one of the greatest things in the world. It really is.
And see, not every Hollywood celebrity gets like royalties too from like past movies. Like a lot of them get it in. Like Robert Downey Jr. I think puts it in his contract.
Probably now. I mean, like,
Well,
who
yeah.
knew that what he played would make as much money as it has?
Robert Downey Jr. scores just fine.
Yeah. But and to go back to something you said earlier, when you say that you don't like that famous people or stars or whoever don't really like it when you fawn all over them, and I think as fans we have to be honest too. Like, you walk up to them and say, like, a pivotal, like, I have not met a lot of people. Like, I won't say that I've met a ton of famous people, but the ones that I have met are so gracious and happy that you're there, and they want to talk to you. So they don't really care that you're kind of fawning all over them. They kind of, like, understand that it's not them you're in love with. It's them, that their character or something that tied you to them.
Yeah.
So, like, we met Ming Na, and
I think I was looking more from a professional aspect. If you're there to interview them, or if you're there to, what I mean? Like, then, leave that shit at the door. But if you're a fan, like, you're just there at a convention or something, yeah, like, drool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a big moment for you. It's huge. It's massive.
It's funny because a lot of people always say, well, I don't like this person because they behaved this way when I met them. And I'm like, Okay, but they're human too. Like, I met Dean Cain, and I thought he was the nicest guy I'd ever met in my entire life. But people had met him and said he was kind of jerk, and I was like, well, what the hell happened? Like anything could have happened to him on his way there. We're still succumbed to the same bullshit as everybody else. And I'm like, so he got stuck in traffic. Just because you have money and you have to be somewhere and you have a driver and a this and a that and a whatever, doesn't mean shit doesn't happen to you. And
yeah, and you got to take that into account too. Sometimes these people get to these conventions. The best example is Walker Stalker. I mean, these people got raked across the coals by this company. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't getting paid. Weren't getting the things they promised when it comes to the different just the different options that they were offered when it came to the event and stuff like that. Not everything goes well. I've seen Bill Moseley is one of the nicest guys on the face of the earth. I've talked to him many, many times. He knows who I am. He knows I exist. And I've seen him pissed off at conventions before. You know what I mean? Just because, he was just having a bad day. People have bad days. You know what I mean? Are you supposed to display that? Probably not. But, sometimes it can be helped.
Well, you expect professionalism too, but you got to remember people are human. Shit happens. Like we met Bill Moseley, and he was awesome. He talked to the kids, gave them high five, like he was cool. And
Kane Hodder in San Diego he was a teddy bear.
I really do.
I'll give you the best example that I have as far as meeting somebody. And I'm not saying anything negative about this guy at all. Like, I still appreciate him and think he's a master and all this stuff. I met Tom Savini before I got into the industry as a fan. It was the first horror convention I've ever been to. And so I got to this event, not to get into the whole thing. It's a pretty long story, but we were at this dinner, me and my friend, and we were supposed to be sitting at this table, with all these celebrities from this convention in New Jersey, Monster Mania, at the event. And all I saw, God bless his heart, bless his soul, rest in peace. All I saw was Gunnar Hansen at the salad bar, and I'm like, oh great. We pay tons of money and we get to see Leatherface eating salad. Well, that's weird. So I went off and I came back and, Sid Haig and Bill and, Amanda Plummer from Pulp Fiction and, obviously other things. And there was a bunch of people at our table just sitting there. And there was an old man at my table and I'm thinking to myself, who the fuck is this old man? And I told this story before, and I was getting ready to tap him on the shoulder, and my friend's in slow motion, no, don't. And then, he looks up and he says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm all sitting in your seat, and it's Malcolm McDowell, and I'm freaking out. And he tells me to get a chair and sit in the middle of him and Tom Savini, and he's talking about Stanley Kubrick in the first person to Tom, and it's crazy. And but Tom was the nicest guy in the world to me, and he said, hey, I'm gonna go out and smoke a cigarette. Do you smoke? Let's go. And I said, yeah, great. So I'm out there with Tom Savini. We took a picture together. I have it on my Facebook. Nicest guy in the world. Then I became I don't know, I guess you want to call it professional in the industry. I had a radio show at the time. I walked up to Tom Savini. I was talking to a friend of mine, Tommy Tolles, rest his soul as well. Sheriff Whitehall from, the House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, and of course, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I go over to Tom Savini and I said, Tom, I know you've heard this a lot, and I'm sorry, but I have to let you know I met you, quite a few years ago, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And now I get to work in horror, and just thank you for that experience or whatever. He didn't even pick up his head, and he just said, "Are you going to buy something or what?"
Oh.
So people have bad days or whatever, or they just I don't know what it is. It's you have the greatest experience with somebody one time, and then the next, you just, it's not so great.
It's just different. I guess it's different aspects of whatever you're doing. You were just a dude at the table. Now you're standing in his line. I mean, I get it, but at the same time,
there was nobody there. It was dead. It was a Friday, because we were there again, and it was dead.
That'll put you in a bad mood,
Mm-hmm. But I still appreciate the guy. I appreciate his work and I appreciate what he's done for the industry. But yeah, that was kind of a bummer.
What is the saying? You should never meet your heroes.
I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. I think what I was trying to say is, like, when you're a professional, like, I used to gush over people all the time, when I first started out. And then, like years later, after having the conversations that I had with, people, I remember one of the first conversations I ever had with this, with a quote unquote celebrity was Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker and I were friends for years, and it makes me feel bad because he's in Fantasy Island, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, so I'm talking to Michael Rooker, and he was, talking to me about, like, look, man, something's got to give. This is the first time I interviewed this guy, by the way. I never talked to Michael Rooker in my life. He calls me at 3:00 in the morning. He just got off a plane. It was about, I think it was about 11 o'clock for him. It was like 3 o'clock for me. And we just talked for hours. And he said, look, man, something's got to give, like, when it comes to, like, my direct DVD movies and stuff like that. I got, bills to pay and mouths to feed and all that stuff. And he goes, I'm just really worried. That was a week before The Walking Dead. He premiered on The Walking Dead. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I don't think you have any issues, my friend. I think, honestly, this show is going to be a juggernaut. And I think it's going to bring in, like, mass amounts of viewers, and it's going to change your life. He said, you think so? And I said, yeah, I absolutely do. And I guess I was right, and then
came around.
Yeah, so Rooker and I were friends for years, like, he came on my radio show many times and stuff like that. Like, we actually had a real friendship, like a real relationship. I remember one of the conversations we had, he said to me, he goes, Rob, he goes, I just want you to know, like, when it comes to our friendship, like, you remind me of myself and Jimmy. And he was talking about James Gunn. I was like, holy shit, like, wow, like, that's crazy. But yeah, then of course, he got into Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, and your relationship breaks off. Like, you're just not, not necessarily, I wouldn't say important anymore. Just, you're on a higher tier of, like, your career, and people just kind of disappear and stuff. So, it just, like, things happen, especially in this industry. If you're friends with somebody in the industry, like, for years, like, they're probably going to go away at some point, and you just kind of got to grin and bear it and say, well,
Well, and it's funny because you were talking about name dropping too, because I went to Flushing High School in Michigan for all 4 years. I knew plenty of people. And so a lot of us have gotten, married and left and gotten careers and gone places and things. And there was an upperclassman. He was 2 years older than me. And he was a horror fanatic in school, made his own movies out in the park, and, was constructing all kinds of things horror, and he loved it. And he'd worked in Michigan for a long time trying to become a makeup artist. And because that was the avenue that he really loved. And come to find out, like, I found out later, because I had moved to Vegas and I was doing all kinds of stuff. He moved to LA and he was working on all kinds of, movies as special effects.
Yeah, he worked on the Chrome Skull movies.
So he worked on Chrome Skull and he was working on
Laid to Rest. Yeah. Well,
are you talking about Hall?
No, Eric Porn.
So he graduated 2 years before me. So then he got the special effects on
MTV's Teen Wolf.
On Teen Wolf. And so he's doing all that special effects and he's in the documentaries. And I'm like, are you shitting me? I'm like, dude, we hung out. And I was super stoked. So I go to the cons and I messaged him on Facebook and I'm like, I am standing in Tyler Hoechlin's line and I am going to drop your name. And he says, dude, he's like, video call me right now. And so I walk up to Tyler Hoechlin and I'm like, I'm a super big fan. I'm super excited to be here, but I'm going to name drop. And he says, well, who do you know? And so I put up the phone and he's sitting there and he's like, you know my dude. And he was like, they're freaking out and they were super excited and they hadn't talked, since the show wrapped. And he's like, these guys are amazing. And it was so funny. And he's like, you know him? You went to high school with him? I'm like, yeah. As he's an amazing guy, right? And so it was just fun. And he was so excited to have that like bridge to talk to somebody again. And I was like, that was awesome. And it like forever solidified like that idea in my head that, when you know people, even if you don't talk all the time, you still mean something to them.
Well, I'll give you the best story that I have that's completely undocumented because, this is another thing that I try to tell people too, is like, when you're in a certain medium, like, you really got to be careful when it comes to taking photos and stuff like that. It just, you got to, kind of pick and choose your battles. Like with Jamie Lee Curtis, I was like thinking to myself, like, you know what? I see the guy from Rotten Tomatoes doing it. I see this person doing it. I'm gonna fucking ask. You know what I mean? Like, so I asked her, and she said, "Sure, baby, let's go." And she like kind of, like put her arm around me and stuff. But one of the most the greatest undocumented moment I ever had in my life, when I was living in Michigan at the time, I was living in the Ferndale area, about 20 minutes away from Detroit. My friend was actually doing. She was an actor in the Oz movie that Sam Raimi had done. I think it was this the prequel or something like that.
With James Franco.
Yeah, with James Franco and Mila Kunis and all that stuff. Michelle Williams. And the reason I bring her up is because she asked me to go to this cast party, and it was just supposed to be like extras at this bar. So I went, and it was like, I think it was like around the summertime, so people used to call me Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because I was wearing a cut-off shirt. And so I'm at this party. I don't know anybody. And then all of a sudden, like, this really beautiful, like small, blonde, petite girl comes into the bar. And I'm thinking to myself, is that like... So anyway, I'm talking to these people, getting to know them and mingle and shit. And I've got my Michael Myers tattoo out in the open. And then all of a sudden, like I'm over here like talking, drinking my beer, and this blonde like starts touching my arm, like looking at the tattoo. And I look down, and it's Michelle Williams. Which, and she's like mesmerized by this tattoo, and she kept like looking at it and touching it and kind of, like jumping back and then going back to it and stuff. And I'm like, "You like it?" And she's like, "I love it, but I fucking hate it." And then, and then she started talking about H2O. We talked about H2O for about 10 minutes, and then that was it. And she just kind of walked away, and, it was like, nice talking to you or whatever. And then I guess she got hounded, like, at the bar and stuff. So she comes back to me, and she grabs my arm, and she says, "You, get over here, please." And I'm like, okay. So, like, she looks at me, and she goes, like, "Listen, I'm having a lot of trouble. My friend's not here." She goes, like, "If you don't mind, you're going to hang out with me for a while. You're okay with that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, So I guess she saw that I was 6'2", and I've got tattoos, and I'm kind of, I don't know, sort of menacing looking or whatever. So I literally was like, I was working with Michelle Williams. People would be like, "Can I get a picture?" And I'd be like, "That's enough. You've had enough." You know what I mean? Like, I'm working security. And yeah, but that was cool, man. Like, getting to talk to like, I mean, like a multiple Oscar winner like that, and and it's completely undocumented. Like I didn't ask for a picture. Just like, what, this is just a moment in my mind to last, and like if people believe me or they don't, straight up. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way it is.
I mean, how could you make that up though? I mean, that sounds like a legit story.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like if it's a legit story, it's funny, dude, because it's like, when you talk about what you do as a career. Like I'm single now. Like if I went to a bar and just like rifled off all the shit, like a girl said, "So what do you do?" And and you told them, it sounds like you're so full of shit. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? That's the lie. The truth is a lie. I just call it, being, just being a middle class income Batman sort of. Work as a server or a teacher or whatever you're doing, and then you get to do some of the cool shit we get to do. You know what I mean? It's like two different lifestyles. It's very strange. It's super strange. But usually the truth is a lie, when it comes to what we do, don't go out there and just say like, "Hey, my name's Rob and I do this or whatever." If somebody asks you, that's fine, but I usually don't say anything unless somebody asks me. It just sounds very weird.
But it was funny because I'm totally standing in his line, and I'm super excited that you got to work on the show. He's like, "Dude, like when you go up there, show him the phone, put me on video and show him the phone."
And he hijacked
my phone and talked on it for 2 or 3 minutes. They were catching up. He's like, "Dude, like message me. Are you still in the same place?" And it was really cool. And I'm like, I got to see how human this person was. Like it wasn't a persona. He was at a table, trying to to put out there at a con. He was like, genuinely thought this guy that I grew up with and went to high school with was the awesomest guy ever. And I was like, oh, this is cool. You know, like, so those little things solidify them in my mind as like real people.
Yeah.
Because when you meet them across the table, there's like that, I don't know, it sometimes feels fake.
Yeah.
Like,
I was gonna say though, if Rob wants to see Eric's work, who's the actor that used to be on Arrow?
Colton Haynes.
Yeah, Colton Haynes. Every Halloween dresses up. Eric does his makeup, so he dressed him up as Fiona from Shrek.
Oh wow.
And Ursula. Yeah.
He did the makeup for.
I'm pretty sure if you go to Eric Porn's Facebook page, I'm sure you're gonna see a lot of people that you guys have in common.
And that is his real name.
Oh, cool.
This is real
Yeah.
name.
So let me ask you guys a question, because it seems like your wife is getting into horror more, probably because you're like kind of imparting that on her, for the most part.
Being forced.
Is there anything that you've seen recently that just really just kind of like blew your mind and made you more excited about the genre and where it's going?
We watched Midsummer,
Mm-hmm.
and Brian's like, Midsummer, the whole like the actual word, I was really kind of excited about, because I was like, oh, that's pagan. I know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is like, well, let's watch it. And I started watching. I was like, this is so pretty. Like I was like, it's beautiful. Like the colors and just the way it's filmed it was really pretty. And then they jumped off the cliff, and I went, what the fuck are we watching?
Yeah.
Like, her face just bounced off the fucking rock, and there's nothing there. And he's like, yeah, just keep watching it. And I'm like, and the whole time I'm watching the story, and I was excited. I'm like, this whole thing took place in the daytime. Like, nothing bad happened at night. They were just sleeping.
Well, here's my
crap.
Here's my impression.
So, that was one.
Like, that's my impression. Midsummer. Thank you very much.
Yes.
But yeah, I was wondering this, if you've even seen it, because like the fact that you are a teacher that kind of educates your kids with with comic books and stuff like that. I think one of the films that really excited me that didn't get a lot of credit, actually was considered one of the worst films of the year, which is ridiculous, was Brightburn. I thought that was pretty phenomenal.
I hadn't seen it because I have to kind of work myself up to some of the stuff. Like, I've read about it, and people were saying it was really intense, and I was like, I don't know if I can, like, because it's a kid, and so
It's like evil Superman.
So like any horror that involves children kind of like freaks me out a little bit. Like,
You have to tell
I-
your story though.
yeah, I will. No.
Well, the whole
People just make fun of me when I sell it.
the whole thing with that, the whole thing that really excited me about that, and you know what, even like Morbius with Jared Leto, is that like now finally we're taking the reins and like incorporating like horror elements into comic book movies. That's really exciting to me. That's really like I'm hoping that like that they take that and they expand that universe. That's why I like Brightburn, because I was excited that these comic book elements were being incorporated into because a lot of people would say like it's basically like evil Superman, as Brian said, but I think there's more to it. I think there's an underlying story there that we don't necessarily know, but if you pay attention, like you'll kind of get
unfold.
Huh?
I'll watch it. It like the underlying story unfolds, and it's not just what the superficial that we see. So we
Exactly.
can just type it, like give it a tagline and say, "Oh, it's like evil Superman."
Like I think like they did with Joker, which again I actually I mentioned that on the show on our show. I think when you say it's like Taxi Driver and like the King comedy, I think that's just really lazy. when it comes to like, trying to compare it to something from the past.
Yeah.
And I think Joker was obviously, I think it was more like William Lustig's Maniac, or like American Psycho, with Patrick Bateman's character, where you have this unreliable narrator and you don't know what's real and what's not, because the whole thing, with Christian Bale's character in American Psycho, like you don't know really honestly whether he is a killer. Did he do any of this stuff? Is he really the Adonis that he, like lets everybody know he is? He has the whole skincare thing and stuff like that. He could be short and bald and fat for all we know. You know what I mean? Everything about him, like cookie cutter, and he's almost like a paper doll, within, the decadence of the 80s. So I thought that Joker was actually more kind of prone to that kind of description as opposed to Taxi Driver. I thought that was really lazy. And, like the same thing with Brightburn, where it's just evil Superman. I think if you look at the underlying context of that particular film, you will see that that kid is like some sort of apex predator, like almost like, kind of like, maybe an insect mind, where like, like you just really movie to understand what I mean, but there are definitely underlying concepts, and you just have to kind of pay attention to the story.
The list is really long of the stuff that we have to watch. So
yeah, we're going back and forth between newer movies and older movies.
There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. Like,
is there anything you particular excited about this year that's coming out?
I think I'm excited about the whole Halloween movie because Brian's so excited about it. And when we saw this newest one with Jamie Lee Curtis in it, I think I kind of understood it better. Like I kind of took that all like she is the last girl, but she's much more than that. Like it was this whole like, I don't know, it was just so much cooler than what I had expected it to be. And so I was super excited about that. And then they're like, well, Halloween Kills is coming out. So I was like, oh, I'm excited about that too. And
the interesting thing about 2018, this is actually something I talked to James Jude Courtney about, who played the, new Michael Myers when we interviewed each other. I think it was around the time, I think it was like maybe a couple months after the movie came out. And I mentioned something to him that really kind of struck him. And he was like, yeah, I got that too. The interesting thing about Halloween 2018, it was like, of course, you've got, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie Strode, is this survivor girl in the original film. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there is like, there is a fear base there and there is a terror there. But, I think the difference between that film and this film was that, there was really kind of this underlying sort of like Me Too movement situation with the film. Because you have, like this whole situation with the, people in the industry with, people in and out of the industry that are, affecting women in some sort of way, like, be it internet stalking or whatever it is. Like, and it just seemed like there was this really like, there was this tone of, female empowerment that was just in a completely different way, that was separated from the original film. And Michael Myers became more of like the embodiment of a lot of men in like our modern life. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't just, this, fictional lumbering character. He became like, what a lot of men become, like, when they're, either like, like really enamored by a woman or stuff, stuff like that. You know what I mean? He became the dick pic. He became the
stalker.
You know what I mean? Like, it was very smart in that regard, I thought.
I just liked the whole, the amount of time that her daughter spent talking about how awful this was and how she taught me all of these things and ruined me. But at the end, it all kind of culminated in this place of, this is what I've been teaching you for. Like, I'm teaching you how to be the last girl. I'm teaching you how to be that fighter, that person that doesn't give up and fights back and ultimately survives. And so all the time when she's saying, I can't do it, she's essentially teaching her how to.
Right. So, and the fact that she was wearing a Christmas sweater during Halloween, that was just phenomenal. She hated Halloween that much. She was like, what, I'm wearing a Christmas sweater. I don't give a shit. I hate this fucking holiday. I thought that was a really smart move on their part.
And I don't know if the other one is really considered horror. Is it considered horror? Is it considered a thriller? Like, it's got a monster in it. So I get,
like I said, Dutch Door, you know what I mean? Thriller, horror, same thing. for the most
So
part.
the other one is I'm super excited about is A Quiet Place 2, which that movie, I think, like in the essence of jumping, like jump scare kind of stuff, like there's certain things that'll get me, like I will jump. Like what was we watched it the other night. What did I watch when I jumped?
We watched Doctor Sleep.
Okay, so I jumped when during a couple of parts in Doctor Sleep where I just like literally was so soaked into it that I was like, oh my God. And I just didn't expect it to scare me. But
well, the weird thing about Doctor Sleep. The weird thing about Doctor Sleep is like I have a very strange attraction to Rose the Hat. Like I mean, like I have a T-shirt with her face on it and stuff, and she's absolutely evil. But like she was just so kind of boho and relaxed about it. Like when she talked, she was like, hi there. You know what I mean? Like she was very subdued when it comes to like very chill and relaxed as a person. Or as a being.
Well,
but
I think it helps.
She owns it.
I was gonna say I think it helps that they cast Rebecca Ferguson because she's just beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so when they were murdering the baseball boy, like as a father, yeah, that affected me. Like that was pretty hard to watch. It was tough. But it was brave and ballsy on Flanagan's part to do that part the way he did. You know what I mean?
Well, and I kind of like that you didn't get more than what you needed. Like it wasn't totally gratuitous. Like it wasn't showing the murder for murder's sake. It was giving you a picture of what Abra saw and merging the two kind of storylines together. Yeah. And so I thought that was pretty masterful. It was hard to watch. It did cause me a lot of anguish like at that moment, but it's anytime when a child is in trouble, I think that I become a little ultra heightened and kind of crazy. But
I think what Mike was trying to do in that scene was when looking at the book, how can I make it visually appear on screen?
Well, I think it was also, to a certain degree, Rose was so lovable that he had just had to give you a point in this story where you're just like, ugh, what a fucking despicable bitch. You know what I mean? Like she's terrible. She's a terrible, terrible, entity. She's horrible. She's super fucking evil. You know what I mean? Because it's really easy to fall in love with her. And I think that's why that character works so well, is because you do have kind of this strange attraction to her, but at the same time, it's like, man, she's despicable. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, it's not, it's like this age-old drug addict, to a certain degree. They have to do this stuff to survive. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like this weird catch-22. And I think that's, when you got well-fleshed characters like that, like where, it's really awful what they're doing, but at the same time kind of makes sense to a certain degree, when it comes to their survival, whatever it is. I think that's why that character particularly works so well. And I love when directors are ballsy. The fact that they incorporated the scene, I know that Chapter 2 gets a lot of shit, but I actually really enjoyed it. The fact that, you see this, this new gay kid come to Derry and get his ass beat and thrown over a bridge. That was really ballsy to do that. Super ballsy. But I think in horror you have to take risks. You just have to. You know what I mean? Like not everything is going to cater to every audience member that you have. But you still have to kind of throw the dice and take the chance. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that these directors are still doing that. Not everything is so so pastiche or cookie cutter. Like they're actually taking risks with their stories.
And I think that we have to start talking about the real horror that happens every day. Like it's okay to talk about werewolves and it's okay to talk about vampires, but at the end of the day, the real horror of that is that he was beaten and he was thrown over the bridge. Like that happens every day. I mean, like we don't realize it. And I think the girl, God, what is her name?
But
Amy Chedrip.
Like even after that kid gets his ass pounded and his face is just completely covered in blood, what is the one thing he says to the main bully? He says, "I hate your hair."
But I think that's kind of like a testament to the old It, is that there had to be a kind of a little bit of a humor aspect in it, like, because you take it way too serious.
Yeah. Well, it also shows that kid's strength too. You know what I mean? Like, even, beaten, he's just like, still fuck you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I think there's two different aspects, or there's two different, tones blended together, obviously, is important, when it comes to storytelling. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, and even the child abuse part of it, like the sexual abuse in the first chapter,
oh, sure.
that we didn't see. I mean, it was there in the miniseries, but in the first chapter, you got hit in the face with it. Like, the reason she was so afraid was because she was abused.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Exactly.
like, it was, I think that that's kind of the breath of fresh air now that I'm understanding in horror, is that a lot of it is, these are real things that we should be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And they happen every day. And we're so ultimately consumed with the monster under our bed. Like, when it's really the monster in our lives, or the monster next door, or the monster, that inhabits an actual human. Like, we wonder where it is. Like, I do enjoy serial killers, but I live in the world of, not in movies, like more the true crime stuff. Like, they are ultimately fascinating people. How do you live a life and be this person and take lives?
Yeah.
No.
And honestly, just, maybe this is just, the exes that I've had in my life or whatever. I'm not sure, but it seems like, I think women have, are more prone to being fascinated by people's psychologies, because obviously, like, we like, men, for the most part, think with a lizard brain, and I think women, just think differently. You know what I mean? So when it comes to, the psyche of, individuals and stuff like that, and, how an individual can, like, turn from, whatever, whatever like aspect of their life it is, from a child to, like, just a complete and utter monster killer. Like, like, yeah, I could see that being fascinating to a woman. I think that's why I think a lot of the girls that I dated in the past, like, wanted to be some sort of forensic psychologist, or, you know what I mean? Like,
My kids always ask me, if you weren't a teacher, what would you do? And I said, I probably would have gone into, like, forensic psychology or forensic pathology or something like that, because I find it fascinating. Like, how does your mind split in all these different ways? But then you have truly terrifying things that, on, like, we watch Prodigal Son and we watch You on Netflix. And even though, okay, the first season was way better than the second, like, I'm starting to see how it's just a little bit over the top at this point. But, like, you see this guy become totally obsessed with this girl, and ultimately it's
spoiler.
this insanity that ensues. And I think,
I was gonna make
that's
a joke.
every
I
day.
was gonna make a joke because you said we watch You on Netflix. I was gonna say, oh, we watch Rob on Netflix.
Oh.
Maybe,
But
maybe someday.
No, I see you. I think you're a Shutter guy, man.
You know what? We talk about Shutter quite a bit on YouTube. Our show is a joke. They do not sponsor us. We're trying to get them on board. But we do say Shutter at least 5-6 times an episode.
thank you.
Yeah. But before we let Rob go, I'm gonna recommend a movie to him, and then you're gonna tell him your People on the Stairs story. So, Rob, it's not a horror film, but it's a movie that's got a lot of it hits you in the feels. It's called The Book of Henry.
Seen it.
Huh?
Horrible.
You seen it?
I've seen it. It's a horrible film.
It's got a great story though. With the message.
That was Colin Trevorrow.
The most things that you've made me watch that ruined me. That movie made me cry 20 minutes after I watched something.
That was Colin Trevorrow, I think, and he was supposed to do the last movie of the Skywalker saga, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And his script was a lot better than JJ's, from what I'm reading. Yeah, I've seen the book Henry. I couldn't even listen. I couldn't even tell you like that plot. Like, there's a couple movies that like just kind of skate by, and that's one of them where I'm just like, I can't remember.
I think it's a girl movie. Because it's all psychological. Like, wait a minute, you're a child. What the hell am I doing? Like, how did I get sucked into this? Like it's a girl plot, I think.
But the message about the next door neighbor, the message was about saving the girl.
Yeah, and it was another cry for child abuse and child sex abuse, as a matter of fact, like things like that. But it was powerful in a different ways. Like, what would you do for your child? What would you do to hold on to them? I think really was what it was. It's like she got sucked into this, listening to his voice on this recording and getting sucked into his plot and realizing that, wait a second, there's a more adult way to deal with this. I have to remember you're only 12. Like, how can I do this so that I still do for you what I said I would do, but not end up making it a bizarre turn for crazy when you're 12.
Right.
Why I bring up that movie is because horror's been doing this kind of stuff for a
Well,
long time.
Here's the interesting thing, Brian. Well, it's interesting because a lot of people, like, when you work in a certain genre, that, like, people just think that's all you watch, like, all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, just fixated on horror, like, all day, every day, and that's not the case at all. Like, I obviously, like, because I'm a father, my son, like, I'm watching a lot of kid shows. I watched Sonic last night. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just a cinephile, man. I love I love I love classic Hollywood. I love 80s movies. I love stuff from the 70s and 60s. Some films from the 50s and stuff like that. I actually I listen to a podcast every week called Unspooled, where they talk about, like, the greatest on the AFI list, for a certain year. And I love all that stuff, man. I'm just a fan of film. And honestly, like, I don't watch like a shit ton of horror like all the time. I think once you like, once you're enveloped in it and stuff, and you're just like, you're just talking about it every day. It's like, I don't know. It's just something you don't want to do all the time anymore. Does that make sense? So I dabble. I dabble in quite a bit.
I understand this. Talk about teaching and being a teacher and teaching all the time. It's like the last thing I do is come home and read about teaching.
Right. Or watching like Dangerous Minds or something like that.
I'm gonna go and I'm gonna turn on the True Crimes channel and watch, the Evil Next Door or whatever. Like, that's the kind of like escape from. What are you doing? The escape that I enjoy is like, I don't have to think about that. I don't have to be PG. I can be totally.
Yeah, with you, it's either like the paranormal shows or ID.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
I'm
gonna end on this note. I'm just happy that next week I get to hear some of the most beautiful words in the world previously on AMC's The Walking Dead. I've been dying for that show to come back. Please, I can't. There's a couple shows where I feel like, really like super grounded and happy when they're on TV. One of them being American Horror Story. Like, that makes me very happy. And Walking Dead is another one. And of course, like, there's other, really good shows out there and stuff. But, like, there's ones that I followed just like forever. And I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like my arm is complete, when these shows are on TV. So I don't know if you guys are Walking Dead fans, but I'm super fucking stoked that show's coming back next week.
I watched it I watched it till Judith was born, and then I was done because.
Oh wow.
I was also. Well, how old was Oliver? He was born.
It was
He was like a year old, wasn't he? Yeah, I was having a real hard time with the whole bringing a child into the zombie apocalypse. I don't know. It was tripping me out. So
yeah, I never dropped.
I just couldn't.
Off. I I never dropped off from that show.
I watched that. I watched Fear. I don't know about this new one that they're doing.
You know what, dude? Fear. I tried Fear many times, and it feels like I'm cheating or something. You know what I mean? Like it's just not the same. You know, the side piece is not going to be the same as the woman who loved you. Like half your life. I just feel like I'm cheating. You know what I mean? That's how I feel with Fear. I just can't get into it. I just could never do it. And this one with the kids that's coming up, I don't know what to expect. It looks fascinating. It looks like, we're probably going to delve into different territories, when it comes to, maybe different countries and worlds and stuff like that. I don't know. It could be fun. I'm just really I just want to know what the hell's going on with these Rick Grimes movies. That's what I want to know. Because Andrew Lincoln, was announced that they were doing a Rick Grimes movie, and then they never said anything about it after that.
Well, so, I guess it's supposed to come out this year, the first one.
Is it this year?
That's what I thought, like at the end of this year.
Yeah, because, I'm just really hoping it's different, because I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan, and, I really got nothing from El Camino. It was just literally, 2 extra episodes of Breaking Bad for me. People were like, it's a masterpiece, it's great, it's this and that, and I'm like, yeah, it's all right. I'm just hoping that, we really get some, real gravitas when it comes to Andrew Lincoln. Where the fuck is he? You know what I mean? Is he somewhere, really dangerous, is Pollyanna still the trash lady? Is she still with him? That's the shit I want to know, man. I really want to. I want to hear some real solid Rick Grimes stories. Anyway, guys, this is becoming a Joe Rogan podcast.
Well, Nicole wants to tell you a story though
about people under the stairs.
No, he wants me to tell a story.
Yes.
I think
I call people under the stairs before Twin Peaks because, the fact that they're both married, I believe they just moved to Twin Peaks and changed their identities and stuff and became, Big Mike and, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But yeah, let's hear the people under the stairs story.
Well, there's oh my gosh. So I saw this movie. It came out in 91, right?
I believe so.
I was 11. And okay, I was 11 and I wasn't a horror connoisseur. I was not watching scary movies and everything scared me. I was a big chicken. And so we were all sleeping over, I think my mom's boyfriend's kids were over and we all watched it together because it was on TV. And so we're all laughing and it's midnight or whatever. And I'm the last one up because, I said, I'm the chicken. And I'm laying in bed and I hear this scraping on the wall. It's and I'm like, oh my God, there's people inside my walls. They're inside my walls. They're living under the floor. I was freaked out. So I go get the flashlight. And my sister and I had water beds. So there was the drawers were underneath, and then there was this gap where the headboard touched the wall. So it was a square that you could roll under, whatever. So I'm they're under my bed. They're coming to get me. And they're gonna get you, Barbara, kind of thing. So I get the flashlight and I'm looking and I'm looking and I'm looking and I cannot find the origin of the sound. And I'm freaking out and I'm by this time I'm crying because I don't know where this sound's coming from. All of a sudden I see my sister's gerbil underneath the thing. I laughed so hard I cried because the gerbil is what's coming to get me from underneath the door. And I'm like, what the hell? But this movie got in my head because it was about child abuse and because it was about that stuff. So it was one of those things that when I became a teacher, I watched again and I was I was so stupid when I was 11. I'm the dumbest things that scare you when you're 11. So that, I don't know why he wanted me to tell that story, but he thinks it's funny to pick on me because I'm a big chicken. But I think the other one is way more funny.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's necessarily people under the stairs, but after watching Parasite, I'm always thinking who the fuck is living on my walls? I'm constantly thinking that now. And then you hear all these stories, like, then you hear all these stories and shit that, like, people, like, have these secret rooms and stuff in their house that they didn't even know about. And there's like a little, like, black and white TV and, like, a cot there, and you're like, ah. So apparently it happens more than just Bong Joon-ho's movie. Like, there's
See, those things that could really happen, though. Like, there's some crazy people in this world.
Yeah. I think they just found this meth couple in a Walmart. They were in the attic of Walmart or something, and they took like a big screen TV from downstairs and stuck it up there and had like
I think I heard that.
Oh
Like,
my God.
they were taking stuff to kind of like live up there. Wouldn't be my choice of places to live, but okay.
That's crazy. Well, we could let Rob go, but we
Yeah.
do appreciate that you wanted to, come on and talk with us, and I think we learned a lot about your journey.
Lots of stuff.
So again, I'm just gonna if you don't mind, I'm just gonna plug real quick again. You guys can catch if anybody's still there. The YouTube show is called Dungeon of Deadly Delights. It's on bi-weekly Sunday at 7 p.m. 4 p.m. Pacific is when the shows start streaming every other week. And then we've got the Dungeon After Dark podcast, which starts in March. And again, you can catch it on iTunes and Stitcher Premium and all that stuff. That's gonna be a lot of fun. That's like our more mature, version of our show. And we'll have celebrity guests as well. Like, I've been talking to quite a few people, like, stuff like that. So I'm really excited to get into that too.
Can people find you on Twitter or anything like that?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm Rob DiLauro at Facebook. I've got the public group, which is Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I've got the Dungeon of Deadly Delights on horror web page. You can go to the horror web page. You can find us there, and I think Dungeon Deadly Delights host on Instagram. I'm on all that shit. And Slasher, which is actually a cross sponsor for the show now. If you guys don't have the Slasher app and you are horror fans, it's a great community. I see it, becoming bigger than Vampire Freaks or something in the next like 10 years. Slasher is a free app. Guys, go get on that. Get on that community, man. It's getting larger and larger every day, and I think it's going to take over Facebook when it comes to the horror community. I'm excited for what's to come for that app.
Awesome. All right, Rob. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll definitely have to get you back on in the future.
And Shutter, if you're listening, please, we say your name 5 or 6 times every episode. Please become our sponsor. Thank you very much.
Yes, AMC, sponsor him.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, listen, this is a real pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on, man. This kind of became the Joe Rogan podcast, as I said before, because that guy, I don't know how the hell he does the 3-hour podcast every single time. He's out of his mind.
Yeah, but they're entertaining, so.
They sure are, man. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Have a great Sunday, everybody. And, listen, if you guys are doing anything, in life, just, I don't know, believe in yourself, take the punches, roll with them, and, take your wins as well, take your sugar just as much as your bruises, and you should do fine. And that's with anything in life, you want to, ask a girl that you have a crush on out in the right way, or you want to, get into sports, or you want to do this and do that. And another thing too, you're never too old to do anything. That's one thing I fucking hate when somebody says like, I'm 38 years old. I'm, in my, I'm past my prime, like, I'm not going to try that. Dude, do whatever you're going to do. A lot of people that are, like, I'm 41. I don't know what what your ages are. I'm not going to ask a lady your age. It's just wrong. Yeah, I mean, like, there is no age, there is no number, expiration date when it comes to success. Just keep doing what you do. Just do whatever you're going to do, and believe in yourself, and I mean, that's really all there is to it. So that's all I got to say.
Well, 29 for the 10th time.
29 for the 10th time.
29 for the 10th time. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, on the words of wisdom there, we're going to end the show. Once again, thank you, Rob, and we'll bring you back on in the future.
Reels and Heels, by the way. Great name. You guys picked a good one. That's good.
Wow.
That's a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, man. You have a good one.
Take care. Have a great Sunday.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. Wow, that was fun.
That's fun. Why does it say that we were only on for 58 minutes?
Because there's
When-
not enough room to add numbers, so it's just a continuation.
Oh, okay. Well, because we've been on for 3 hours.
Yeah. All right.
That was really long. I don't know.
It was fun listening to Rob.
I just like hearing people talk about cool stuff that they've done. Because you celebrate people. Like, you talk about the things, like, you can either consider it being full of yourself or you can consider it celebrating achievements. I think we need to celebrate achievements and say, you know, exactly what he said. You're never too old to do what you want to do. If you love it, do it. And so, on that note, I think that that's probably the best way to end the show. Is like, if you love it, pursue it. If you want it, go for it.
Right. Yeah. And until next week.
Who do we have next week?
Next week.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Flesher.
I stole your paper.
Next week we have Michael Flesher, who does a lot of the commentaries and special features for Blu-ray.
Next week will not. It cannot be as long as we did because I will be having to write a paper.
Oh,
So I will have to be a little bit more proactive and not so procrastinative.
well, that's why we have only one guest next week.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah. All right, guys. You have a happy Sunday. Bye-bye.